The story of planet growth. This video is purely for entertainment and does not infringe on copyrights or laws. The rights to the novel and image belong to the original author. We do not claim ownership. Don't like waiting and want to listen to this fanfic in full now? Subscribe to our Patreon, where you'll find the best fanfics. Chapter 1: A New Beginning. In the vast and dark universe, there are countless stars of all sizes. These stars move with the movement of the universe under the influence of the rules of the universe. If there is no accident, these countless stars in the universe will be born and die with the universe. However, the world is so big that nothing is impossible. In this silent universe, a will from another universe, under the influence of mysterious power, has a second life in the void of the universe. In the void of the universe, on a not very large meteorite, a will from the earth gradually revived. Where is this? Am I dead? A confused voice sounded in the silent void of the universe. This voice did not spread in the void of the universe, but only existed in the consciousness of the owner of the voice. Who am I? What is my name? Inside the small meteorite, a hazy figure was shouting, but no one could give it an answer. In the void of the universe, time has no meaning. After a long time, a vague memory slowly emerged in the consciousness of the hazy figure. On a remote street, a drunk young man staggered on this abandoned street that had not been repaired for a long time. There was a loud thump. Then there was the sound of splashing water. The young man fell into the sewer unlucky. The water in the sewer was not very deep, but the drunk young man had no strength to stand up. In this way, a good young man of the motherland drowned silently in the sewer. A flower that had not yet bloomed withered just like this, which was really a pity. Lee Heo recalled the process of his death, and a feeling of frustration surged into his heart. I didn't expect that I, Lee Heo, a good young man, would die in the sewer so unlucky. God, why didn't you take the initiative and kill me directly? Inside the meteorite, Lee Heo vented his frustration. In his opinion, it would be better to die in the sewer and be regarded as a coward by the world. It would be better to be struck to death by thunder and be regarded as an unforgivable evil person by the world. Time will eventually erase all the bad memories. It was unknown how long it took for Lee Heo to come back to his senses from the aggrieved memories. He began to observe the situation around him. However, after observing, Lee Heo felt that it would be better not to look at it. It was pitch black everywhere, and he could not see anything. Just as Lee Heo was gradually despairing in the darkness, Lee Heo did not know why he floated upwards. However, Lee Heo's hazy figure had just emerged from the inside of the meteorite, and various rays from the void of the universe shone on Lee Heo's body. Immediately, an extremely shrill scream broke out from Lee Heo's mouth. This shrill scream was like being beaten by 100 strong men. It was really sad and tearful. Lee Heo, as a conditioned reflex, quickly retracted into the inside of the meteorite with a force that was faster than thunder. This prevented Lee Heo from being directly scattered by the rays of light in the void of the universe. At this time, Lee Heo, who had retracted into the meteorite, was covered with a hazy light, like a black and white TV with a bad signal, flickering non-stop. After an unknown amount of time, Lee Heo finally calmed down. Coming back to his senses from the endless pain, Lee Heo looked at a virtual panel in front of him. Name, Lee Heo. Age, gender, star level, meteorite source power. 1 talent, fusion, movement, perspective. A simple virtual panel that looked like a toy appeared in front of Lee Heo, showing various data marked with Chinese characters. Lee Heo looked at the virtual panel in front of him and muttered to himself, I'm really lucky. I traveled through time and became the will of the planet, and I have a system that surpasses everything. Among all the conditions of the protagonist of a novel, I actually have the best ones. From now on, I have hope of becoming a god. In the seemingly empty and boundless universe, there is actually a large amount of material energy and information. These materials and information together constitute the dark universe. Lee Heo had just emerged from the inside of the meteorite that protected him. Although he almost died, he also gained huge benefits. That is a system panel that helps him display all his states, as well as some basic information in the universe. In the universe where Lee Heo was reborn, everything is made up of source power. Whether it is the material planets that have existed since ancient times or the life groups within the planets, they are all evolved from source power. As long as you have enough source power, you have all possibilities. No mistakes. One post, one content, 1619, one book, one bar. Lee Heo recalled the cosmic information he had obtained at the risk of his life, and couldn't help shouting excitedly, "It's developed! It's developed!" In this universe, almost all the stars have no independent consciousness. But I'm the only star in this universe with independent consciousness. Whether it is based on the rarity of matter or the priority of change, I'm unique. This entire universe will be my hunting ground. At this time, Lee Heo was like a demon, dancing and waving his hands. Fortunately, there was no one else around, otherwise the hat of a mental patient would never be taken off. As I said, time is never valuable in the universe. After a long time, Lee Heo finally stopped from his excitement. Lee Heo condensed his hazy body into a human form, then sat cross-legged inside the meteorite, covered his face with his left hand, and whispered, "Damn it, I didn't expect that I could hardly control my emotions in the state of soul. In the past, I had the limitations of a physical body, although there were all kinds of unpleasantness. But at least I could stop for a short time. Now it's good. My thoughts are very clear. Once I get excited, I will be excited all the time, unless I completely vent this excitement. There is almost no limit. It seems that I have to find a physical body to carry my soul as soon as possible." Thinking about it, Lee Heo looked at the meteorite under him, slapped his thigh and said, "Yes, the will of the planet, the will of the planet. If the will and the planet are not merged, what is the will of the planet?" With a thought, Lee Heo immediately decided to start the fusion of soul and meteorite. Lee Heo has 3 talents: fusion, movement, and perspective. Among the 3 talents, fusion is to merge Lee Heo's soul and any material into everything, forming an inseparable and close connection. As the fusion talent was activated, Lee Heo's soul immediately dispersed into countless tiny particles and began the process of merging with the meteorite. Each soul particle was like Lee Heo's hands and feet, integrating Lee Heo's perception into every corner of the meteorite. The material particles belonging to the meteorite and the soul particles belonging to Lee Heo combined with each other. Finally, a unique planet in the universe was born. Lee Heo named it Yuanxi Star, which means the beginning of the universe. Chapter 2: Wandering Stars. In the vast and boundless dark universe, a special meteorite that is independent of any galaxy cycle is flying around in the universe like a racing car. It seems that all the rules in the universe have no effect on this special meteorite. Lee Heo has 3 talents: fusion, movement, and perspective. Fusion can integrate Lee Heo's spiritual will into the meteorite where he exists, and treat this meteorite as Lee Heo's physical body. Movement can help Lee Heo move his meteorite body in the universe at will without being bound by the various cosmic laws in the universe. The perspective ability is the ability to liberate Lee Heo from the dark environment inside the meteorite. In Lee Heo's view, all the stars in the universe are fixed templates that operate according to established procedures. Without the influence of external forces, lives with sufficient computing power can even directly deduce the entire universe model according to the connection between the laws of the universe. Now, in this fixed universe model, Lee Heo is the external force among the stars that are running in a fixed program around him on the Yuanxi Star. The fusion talent combines Lee Heo and the Yuanxi Star together, giving the Yuanxi Star an independent wisdom. The mobility talent gives the Yuanxi Star the ability to wander in the universe, and the perspective talent allows Lee Heo to see all kinds of situations in the universe without being disturbed by the cosmic energy. The combination of various conditions allows a person who looks like a meteorite, but is actually a human being, to be born in the universe. Under the effect of the mobility talent, Lee Heo's will controls his body, wandering in the empty universe, feeling the tranquility and loneliness in the universe. Time is like a millstone, bit by bit, wearing away Lee Heo's active thinking. Repetition, repetition everywhere, obviously sailing for a long time, but the star, that seems to be right in front of me, has no sign of approaching at all. Inside the Yuanxi Star, Lee Heo roared madly. Although compared with other stars in the universe, Lee Heo has the ability to move, and the wisdom of human beings. But in the boundless and vast space, this ability to move, as well as human wisdom, seems to be a torture. If you don't try, you will never know what despair is. Lee Heo knows that his moving speed is very fast, and it may even exceed Lee Heo's imagination, but without a reference, this fast moving speed is the same as having nothing. And human wisdom is even more of a torture. In the long space voyage, Lee Heo feels that his human reason is gradually being swallowed up by the darkness around him. These darknesses from the universe try to turn Lee Heo into a part of the universe like the stars around him that obey the laws of the universe. At this time, Lee Heo encountered the biggest crisis in space voyage, the twilight of thinking. Endless repetition is swallowing up everything of Lee Heo, erasing Lee Heo's only thinking activity, and turning Lee Heo into an object named Lee Heo, no longer an intelligent life. Perhaps this universe has also given birth to intelligent stars like Lee Heo, but they all disappeared in the endless void of the universe. Under the vastness of space and the long time, everything they have returned to the universe again. Without a reference object to compare, Lee Heo didn't know how much time had passed, but he could clearly feel that he was facing death. But he was powerless. In the blink of an eye, an unknown amount of time passed quickly, and the position of Lee Heo and the position of the star closest to him still did not shrink at all. Just when Lee Heo's new life was about to disappear again, it was unknown whether it was the favor of the will of the universe or Lee Heo's luck that played a role. A voice that only existed in Lee Heo's mind sounded. A slightly confused voice sounded inside the meteorite. I seem to have hit something. As this thought arose in Lee Heo's mind, Lee Heo's calm ocean of thought, like the Dead Sea, gradually began to boil. Ripples continued to spread in the calm ocean of thought, awakening Lee Heo from the edge of death. Finally, I survived. A heavy sigh rose in Lee Heo's heart, and with the appearance of the reference object, Lee Heo began to revive again like a dead person who was about to die. With the activation of his perspective talent, Lee Heo saw the scene in front of him without the help of the light of stars. It was a group of meteorites. Countless large and small meteorites were quietly floating in the void of the universe, sailing in the void of the universe at an incomparable speed. In the universe, there is no absolutely static object. The group of meteorites in front of Lee Heo are all sailing at the same speed, and the intrusion of Lee Heo, an alien meteorite, has provided new changes for this group of meteorites. No mistakes. The meteorite hit by Lee Heo's meteorite began to accelerate. This rampaging meteorite began to gradually pry the order in the meteorite group, thus forming a new orderly operation. If nothing unexpected happens, after thousands of years, this group of meteorites will sail in another direction at another speed. However, Lee Heo's unique existence in the universe and stars has provided a new choice for this group of meteorites. That is to merge into the original stars. With the changes brought about by the meteorite group, Lee Heo's thinking activity began to gradually increase. After the blessing of time, Lee Heo's thinking activity has recovered to its previous level. And there is still a trend of climbing upward, but if there is no accident, this time the thinking activity rises, it will soon drop again, so that Lee Heo will enter the twilight of thinking again. After all, in this dead and vast universe where Lee Heo is, there is only Lee Heo, an intelligent life, and only Lee Heo, an external force. In the absence of a second intelligent life to communicate with him, Lee Heo's thinking activity will quickly decrease until dusk. Under Lee Heo's control, the Yuan-Shi star began to look for targets in this meteorite group. Lee Heo's fusion talent can only fuse meteorites smaller than his own size. Meteorites that are too large will directly smash the Yuan-Shi star, where Lee Heo is. You must know that Lee Heo only has a little source of power at this time. Once this little source of power is consumed, Lee Heo will be game over. Chapter 3 Difficult Eating. In the dark universe, Lee Heo drove the Yuan-Shi star around the meteorite group, not daring to get too close, nor too far away. Although Lee Heo could drive the Yuan-Shi star to move freely in the universe, this kind of random movement was just like a human running. If he used too much force, he would rush out directly without time to brake. The result was a lose-lose situation. The Yuan-Shi star and the meteorite would perish together and become a wisp of dust in the universe. If he used too little force, the Yuan-Shi star would not be able to keep up with the speed of the meteorite, and Lee Heo would not be able to activate his fusion talent. Therefore, swallowing meteorites in the universe is a technical job. Don't be impatient. Keep a slightly faster speed than the moving meteorite, which is the strength of normal human touch, and then activate the fusion talent to let Lee Hao's soul directly pass through the place where the meteorites are connected to each other from the Yuanshi star without touching the universe and directly reach the fused meteorite. Finally, Lee Hao's soul devoured the material particles contained in the fused meteorite bit by bit, allowing the Yuanshi star and the meteorite to merge together. The difficulty is like a car driving on a highway trying to get close to each other. If it's too fast, the car will be destroyed, and the people will die. If it's too slow, you can't even touch a hair. The difficulty that Lee Hao faces in fusing the meteorite now is to make the surface of the meteorite and the surface of the Yuanshi star contact at a negative distance, and keep this process for hundreds or even thousands of years, until Lee Hao swallowed it up, and the two meteorites merged into one. This is a long process, but in the universe, time is meaningless. I don't know how long it took, but after countless failures, Lee Hao finally brought the surface of the Yuanshi star and the scene of the meteorite into contact. Lee Hao was terrified during this process. If he increased the speed a little bit, he would die. As the two meteorites touched each other, on the material level, the two meteorites were finally connected together. At least from Lee Hao's point of view, the cosmic energy at this time could no longer pass through the gap between the two meteorites and cause harm to himself. After this operation, like connecting the space station, Lee Hao finally took his first step in this universe. Afterwards, without too much excitement, Lee Hao's soul directly passed through the contact part between the two meteorites, from the Yuanshi star to the inside of the meteorite, activated the fusion talent, and began his first step in expanding in the universe. From the perspective of the universe, the Yuanshi star and the swallowed meteorite at this time, like a pair of twin brothers connected by skin, fit together tightly, without the slightest gap. And this fit is still deepening with the advancement of time. Perhaps it won't be long before the two meteorites will become connected by flesh and blood, and even until the end. At this time, half of Lee Hao's soul is on the Yuanshi star, and the other half is constantly moving towards the inside of the meteorite. The material particles belonging to the meteorite are swallowed and fused by Lee Hao's soul particles, and finally transformed into the source of cosmic power. The evolution of this universe is very similar to that described in the Tao Te Ching on Earth. Everything comes from nothingness, and nothingness gives birth to source power. Tao gives birth to 1, 1 gives birth to 2, 2 gives birth to 3, and 3 gives birth to all things. Tao follows nature. Lee Hao didn't know what kind of power made the source power appear, but he knew that the source power gave birth to souls and matter. Matter gives existence to all living things, and soul gives all living things variables. Under the auspices of mysterious power, souls and matter gave birth to all things in the universe. Therefore, in this universe, pure matter is not source power, and pure soul is not source power. Only the combination of soul and matter is source power. It seems a lot of unnecessary, right? It was source power at the beginning, and after separation and combination, it is source power again. If so, why separate it? Lee Hao didn't understand this question at first, until Lee Hao kept thinking about it during the long voyage in the universe, and finally he came up with a conclusion. Process, or history. It seems that there is nothing extra when the source power is separated and combined, but in fact, there is a crucial thing in this process, history. The source force has been fixed since its birth. If it is not separated, even if the time that has passed is long, it is just a waste of time. There will not be the slightest increase, nor will there be the slightest decrease. And in the process of the source force separating and combining again, history is born. And the existence of history makes it possible for the source force to grow. No mistakes. One song, one post, one content, one 6, one 9, one book, one bar, one look. Under the premise that everything remains unchanged, the source force is divided into matter and soul. Because the unchanging nature of matter, the source force turns more than half of its existence into matter, thus forming the void of the universe. And because the variables of the soul are easy to produce history, the source force turns the remaining part of itself into the soul. Every combination of soul particles and material particles will give birth to the source force. Under the fundamental rule of the unity of the universe, the soul will continue to change, thus producing history. And history, like food, allows the soul to continue to grow, and eventually the empty material universe is filled with the existence of soul particles. In this process, the source force will grow unprecedentedly until the soul particles combine with the material particles of the entire universe, thus forming a great destruction, and everything returns to the beginning again, waiting for the next universe to reappear. As for whether this conclusion is the ultimate truth of this universe, Lee Heo does not know, but from his own experience, this conclusion is 80% credible. Lee Heo's original soul was only the size of a human, and in the process of Lee Heo's soul and Yuan-Shi star's fusion, Lee Heo's soul grew to the size of a meteorite, and in the process of Yuan-Shi star swallowing the meteorite, Lee Heo's soul particles continued to grow. Although the speed of this growth was countless times slower than the speed of a snail, but it was indeed growing. And the source force formed by the fusion of soul particles and material particles is also constantly growing. At least from this process, the conclusion drawn by Lee Heo is correct. There is no source force on the meteorite, and after Lee Heo arrived, Lee Heo's soul particles and material particles are merging with each other. In this process, Lee Heo's source force is increasing from 1 to 2. This continuous long-distance race, which is far more than a marathon, runs non-stop under the impetus of time. The relationship between the primordial stars and meteorites is merging bit by bit, and in this process, the movement speed of the two has not changed at all. This state will last for tens of thousands of years, or even millions of years. Chapter 4 Evolution, Small Planets. It was unknown whether it was thousands or tens of thousands of years, but the Yuan-Shi star finally swallowed the meteorite under Lee Heo's control. At this time, Lee Heo's system panel showed name, Lee Heo age, gender, star level, meteorite source power. 2 talents, fusion, movement, perspective. Lee Heo looked at the system panel and saw everything he had now and couldn't help but sighed. Oh my god. Just a meteorite has consumed me for tens of thousands of years. Although time is not valuable to me, it's too wasteful. Lee Heo was undoubtedly very painful at this time. Compared with those predecessors who traveled through time, Lee Heo was still in the most primitive stage of capital accumulation. There was even no talk of accumulating in a bloody way. There was only one reason for everything: not qualified. The volume of just 2 meteorites, in this vast universe, is not even comparable to a drop of water in the ocean. It can almost be said to be a water molecule in the ocean. But no matter how Lee Heo sighed, he still had to do what he had to do, unless Lee Heo was willing to end it at dusk. There are a huge number of material particles in a meteorite, but Lee Heo has to use all his soul particles to devour all the material particles in the meteorite bit by bit, and Lee Heo's soul particles are still limited by the number, and can only wait for the derivation of time. In this process of swallowing and growing, only history can make soul particles grow rapidly, but unfortunately, if Lee Heo wants to create a rich history by himself, it would be better to kill him with a knife. After swallowing a meteorite, Lee Heo looked around the universe and the huge group of meteorites in the universe. A sigh came out of Lee Heo's mouth. The universe is so wonderful, but I can only mine here. God, save me. Any sighs and complaints are just Lee Heo soothing his depressed heart. After indulging himself, Lee Heo has to continue mining in the universe. This digging, I don't know how many long years have passed. After an unknown number of years, Lee Heo looked at his territory with satisfaction, a cosmic star composed of dozens of huge meteorites. Although Lee Heo's original star still did not produce gravity due to its size, Lee Heo could directly attract the meteorites without doing anything. But after a long period of hard work, Lee Heo finally had the qualifications to make the original bloody accumulation of capital. By constantly devouring the meteorites in the universe, Lee Heo's source power is constantly growing. Lee Heo estimated that in a short time, the source power he accumulated would be able to give birth to the basic talent of the star, gravity. At this time, Lee Heo's system panel showed name, Lee Heo age, gender, star level, meteorite source power. 19 talents, fusion, movement, perspective. Lee Heo looked at the system panel that sorted out his current situation, nodded with satisfaction, and then said, "Not bad, not bad. Maybe soon, my Yuan-Shi star will be able to grow into a small planet. Now, cheer yourself up, come on, and work hard." So, the bitter mining career began again. Another long time passed, and as Lee Heo mined, the source power he had was gradually approaching 20. A loud bang. A sound like the sonata of heaven and earth arose in Lee Heo's heart. Lee Heo knew that at this time, the Yuan-Shi star had crossed the boundary of meteorites and reached the bottom of small planets. In the vast universe, among a group of drifting meteorites, a maverick small planet stood in the center of the meteorite group. The combination of the meteorite group and the small planet was like a galaxy. However, the promotion of Yuan-Shi star did not make Lee Heo happy for long. As the meteorite was promoted to a small planet, the unique innate ability of the cosmic star, gravity, began to breed inside the small planet. As time went on, this gravity was constantly increasing, and then something happened that made Lee Heo's scalp numb. Imagine that a large group of meteorites suddenly appeared in the space near the Earth, and all these meteorites were within the gravity range of the Earth. At this time, the gravity of the Earth suddenly increased a little. There was only one word to describe that scene: the end of the world. This is the situation that Lee Heo's Yuan-Shi star is facing at this time. Because Yuan-Shi star suddenly promoted to the level of a small star under the support of the source force, and then generated gravity. No mistakes. One sentence, one post, one content, 1619, one book, one bar, one look. The gravity bred by the stars attracted the surrounding meteorites to constantly move closer to Yuan-Shi star. In the blink of an eye, Lee Heo was happy because of the promotion of Yuan-Shi star. It was almost facing collapse. Once these meteorites floating in the void of the universe hit the Yuan-Shi star, relying on the mass of the Yuan-Shi star, in an instant, they would become cosmic dust. To a certain extent, the Yuan-Shi star is Lee Heo's physical body. The destruction of the Yuan-Shi star is equivalent to Lee Heo being killed. Damn it, I finally experienced the feeling of being surrounded by a group of gays. This feeling is so fucking exciting. There is no doubt that Lee Heo has fallen into the lost joy mode at this time. Facing a group of gays staring at you, and you don't want to lose your chrysanthemum, then you can only run, while your attraction has not reached its maximum. Then, an exciting cosmic chase began. Lee Heo stepped on the accelerator of the Yuan-Shi star. Under the effect of the mobile talent, the Yuan-Shi star began to shuttle around in the meteorite group like a raging racing car. All the gaps in the meteorite group that the Yuan-Shi star passed through were driven by the gravity of the Yuan-Shi star and gathered towards the center. Soon, the sound of imagination that only Lee Heo could hear rang out in the universe. Bump. Click. Crack. Come again. On the crazy cosmic racetrack, the surging Yuan-Shi star was enthusiastically pursued by all the meteorites. They chased Yuan-Shi star madly, trying to make their bodies have a passionate and intimate contact with Yuan-Shi star's body. Finally, in an explosion that moved the universe, the last spark of life bloomed, thus creating an immortal legend in the void of the universe. Obviously, our Yuan-Shi star player did not want to have a passionate collision with this group of fans. It chose to escape. This shameful behavior was condemned and hunted down by all meteorites. Ah, the romance of the stars, how can mortals understand? Love her, and die with her, this is the most sincere love. Chapter 5: The Emergence of Gravitational Fields. This romantic cosmic chase lasted for a long time. After an unknown number of years, Lee Heo finally led Yuan-Shi star to get rid of the pursuit of the meteorite group and place the meteorites in the meteorite group outside the gravity of Yuan-Shi star. At this time, the universe where Lee Heo was located was extremely empty. There were no large meteorites within the gravitational range of Yuan-Shi star. After getting rid of the crisis of life and death, Lee Heo began to study his next plan. The material particles on Yuan-Shi star were like Lee Heo's hands and feet, condensing on Yuan-Shi star to form a massive cosmic star. The gravitational field around Yuan-Shi star expanded Lee Heo's perception range several times. With the help of the natural ability of gravity, Lee Heo had a larger control range and visual range than before. The gravity nurtured by this star is like the hands and feet that suddenly grew out. It is useful, but it requires a long time of practice. Lee Heo sensed the range of the gravitational field in the universe, and muttered to himself. At this time, if the mass of the Yuan-Shi star is considered, it is about the same size as the moon. However, if the gravitational coverage of the two is considered, the Yuan-Shi star, because it is not constrained by the gravity of the Earth, has a much larger gravitational coverage than the moon. In the dark universe, there is no light except for the little light spread by the stars. In the seemingly empty universe, there are countless dangers hidden. And these deadly dangers are insidiously hidden in the darkness, hunting the stars that dare to wander around in the universe at any time. For his own safety and freedom, Lee Heo decisively stopped his wandering after the Yuan-Shi star was promoted to a small planet. The most likely danger to wander aimlessly in the universe is the black hole hidden in the darkness, or even those wandering planets that cannot be observed. Otherwise, in the process of wandering in the Yuan-Shi star, because of carelessness, it is captured by the gravity of a planet and becomes a satellite of the planet, completely losing its freedom. Compared with these kinds of dangers, it is better to stay where you are, just like those ordinary stars in the universe. In addition, Lee Heo also needs to consolidate everything he has, so as to completely control this new body. Under the combination of various conditions, stopping is the best choice. Inside the Yuan-Shi star, Lee Heo perceives the cosmic void where he is through the coverage of gravity, and forms an ultra-long visual range through the combination of perspective and gravity. Wherever gravity is, that is where Lee Heo's eyes can reach. In the cosmic void, covered by the Yuan-Shi star and the surface of the Yuan-Shi star, Lee Heo's eyes are like God, watching his territory and inspecting everything in the territory. Lee Heo named this way of perception as God's perspective. Under the effect of God's perspective, Lee Heo can observe everything within the coverage of gravity in a very short time, so that Lee Heo can control the situation around him at all times, so that he will not react until the enemy is about to approach him. At this time, Lee Heo, who has a God's perspective, undoubtedly has part of the rights of the planet's will. Lee Heo named this right belonging to the planet's will as Xianquan, which means the authority of heaven. All under heaven belongs to the king. All the people in the land are the king's subjects. This is the ruling right of the emperor on earth. What is the ruling right of the planetary will? After having the God's perspective, Lee Heo looked at his vast territory and asked in doubt. All territories are the king's ruling area. All creatures on the land are the king's subjects. And the same is true for the planetary will. Territory and interference are the core of all rule. Then for the planetary will, what you can see is the heavenly domain. In the heavenly domain, everything belongs to the sky. What you can see and what you can interfere with is the core of the power of the sky. Now, I can see with the God's perspective, but I can't interfere, so my next step is to give myself a means to directly interfere with the material level. After Lee Heo asked himself the question, he gave the answer to his question again, and used this answer as the next goal of the implementation plan. No mistakes in one song, one post, one content, one book, one bar, 1619, one book, one bar, one look. At this time, Lee Heo has the ability to move at the macro level, that is, the ability to let Yuan-Shi star wander freely in the universe. However, at the micro level, that is, within the gravitational field of Yuan-Shi star, there are not many means of interference, and even for the dust and sand on the surface of Yuan-Shi star, Lee Heo has not much means of interference. Lee Heo treats Yuan-Shi star just like the human soul treats his vegetative body. He can see everything about his body, but the sad thing is that he has no means of interfering with his body. However, Lee Heo is better than the vegetative person, in that he can control Yuan-Shi star to run away directly, just like playing a web game. If I can't beat you in operation, then I won't play with you. You can do whatever you want, I'll go and cool off. In any case, it is extremely difficult for Lee Heo to create an interference method that can cooperate with the God's perspective in a short time. At this time, it is necessary to use the ability of imagination. Time passed quickly in the universe, while Lee Heo was familiar with the gravitational field of Yuan-Shi star. When testing the gravitational effect through a nearby meteorite group, Lee Heo really came up with a means of interfering with the material level. It's still the old saying, learn from nature. If you don't understand, ask. Ask teachers. Ask parents. Ask anyone who can answer your doubts. And for Liheo, the only teacher he can ask is the vast universe. Everything in the universe is evolved from the source force, and every particle in this vast universe has the imprint of the source force. And Liheo's method of interfering with matter is to imitate the way the source force evolves the universe, and imprint his soul imprint on the material particles, so that these imprinted material particles can be used as a means of interfering with the material level. The method is very simple. The source force is composed of material particles and soul particles. The source force that has been returned to its origin by Liheo will be split into material particles again. However, unlike the evolution of the universe, the material particles split from Liheo's source force will have a trace of soul particles, and this trace of soul particles will become Liheo's means of controlling material particles. Because the source force is composed of material particles and soul particles, the material particles split by Liheo are not as good as the orthodox source force, but they are equivalent to the second-rate source force, and this second-rate source force can be better absorbed by life. Liheo named this particle, that can interfere with the material level, the universal particle, also known as the God particle. Chapter 6 Universal Particle. The appearance of the God particle means that Liheo can make his will pass under his sight. Whatever Liheo can see, Liheo can interfere. However, the strength of this interference will be slightly enhanced or weakened with the number of God particles and the distance of the gravitational area. Liheo named the place where his sight reaches the interference area. According to the number of God particles and the distance of gravity, it is divided into 3 levels: core interference area, strong interference area, and finally weak interference area. In the core interference area, as long as the enemy's overall combat power does not exceed Liheo, then Liheo is invincible. In other words, in the core interference area, as long as there is no ability to destroy everything of Liheo in an instant, then Liheo will be invincible to any existence. In the strong interference area, Liheo's interference ability will drop a level, from the invincible god to a powerful god, with very obvious weaknesses, which can be wiped out by the weak through various strategies. Unlike the god's perspective, which can instantly reach any place in the interference area, the transmission of god particles takes time, even if this time is very short, which is also a fatal weakness. Once entangled by a strong enemy in the strong area, resulting in insufficient supply of god particles, Liheo will face the embarrassing situation of losing backup. This is why once Liheo leaves the core interference area, he will fall from the invincible god to a powerful god. As for the last weak interference area, Liheo's ability will fall even more seriously, and may even fall directly to half of his power. The process of the gradual decline of this interference area is like the concept of a country's core capital, inland territory, and border boundary. A powerful country usually has its wars in the border boundary, that is, Liheo's weak interference area. In this area, the ability that Liheo can exert depends entirely on whether his opponent is strong. If the opponent is weak, Liheo can exert the combat power of the god level in the weak interference area. Of course, at this time, the so-called weak interference area has already belonged to the strong interference area. The transformation of strong and weak interference areas depends entirely on the number of Liheo's god particles in the interference area. At this point, Liheo's path forward was instantly clear. Unlike the protagonists in the novels that Liheo read in his previous life, they could only grow into strong people after going through many life-threatening situations. For Liheo, as long as there are enough god particles, and as long as the range covered by the god particles is wide enough, Liheo can turn the entire universe into his own interference area, and then cover the entire universe in his sight. Let his will pass under his sight, and become the will of the universe. Everything is very simple. There is no separation of life and death, no deep hatred, and even no need for life and death. As long as Liheo can follow the plan, Liheo can grow into the will of the universe, and this process only requires time. And time is the least important for Liheo. However, is everything really that simple? No, this process is not simple. If Liheo does nothing, and waits for time to pass, and then pushes himself to the position of the will of the universe, then this time will be extremely long. It was so long that the universe was destroyed, so long that the universe was reborn, and so long that the universe was reincarnated. Time was not important to Lee Heo, but such a long time process. How many creatures in the entire universe have independent wisdom and can stand quietly and wait quietly like the immortal stars in the universe until the reincarnation of the universe has passed one after another? On the earth in Lee Heo's previous life, even a child knew that as long as you can persist, no matter what you do, you will succeed. Don't say all kinds of reasons, they are just excuses. Do one good deed every day for a lifetime, and you will be remembered by human civilization forever. Enforce the law impartially for a lifetime, and you will be remembered in history, and share the glory with mankind. Look, as long as you persist, everything is so simple. However, the interference of others, the misunderstanding of others, and even the lack of change after your own efforts will cause your final result. Give up. Things in the world are very simple, but life has complicated them. Everyone knows that taking shortcuts is not good, but once shortcuts appear, they will scramble for them until they meet with swords. It is impossible for Lee Heo to wait quietly for his promotion in the universe. This is impossible for any life with self-will. No mistakes. Lee Heo will definitely look for shortcuts, plunder, kill, and even destroy. All of this will cause various crises and even death. There is nothing in the world, but mediocre people worry about it. It is because of Lee Heo's mentality and life's mentality that the universe is full of infinite variables, which provides nutrients for the growth of soul particles and makes the promotion of the universe possible. Everything in the universe is constructed by material particles, and the material particles that have been imprinted by Lee Heo's soul can also be called omnipotent particles. Now, under Lee Heo's control, the material particles are split from the source force again. Because of Lee Heo's soul imprint, the omnipotent god particles begin to gradually fill the entire Yuanxi star. On the Yuanxi star, the core interference area belonging to Lee Heo is constructed. The source power on the Yuanxi star began to slowly decrease, thus becoming the god particles that permeated the Yuanxi star. As time passed, when the source power dropped to half, the entire Yuanxi star shrank several times out of thin air, and at the cost of this, the entire outer part of the Yuanxi star began to undergo magical changes. Once from the surface of the Yuanxi star, Lee Heo could directly see the darkness in the void of the universe and the light of the stars in the darkness. But now, between the Yuanxi star and the void of the universe, a wisp of hazy mist began to emerge. This wisp of hazy mist was the atmosphere formed by the god particles. However, because there were too few god particles, the atmosphere at this time was not very obvious. But Lee Heo could still see the dark void of the universe through the shallow atmosphere. But this was at least a great progress. Lee Heo could not appear on the surface of the Yuanxi star because his soul particles could not directly contact the cosmic energy. But now, as the atmosphere on the Yuanxi star gradually thickened, under the interference of the god particles, Lee Heo might be able to appear directly on the surface of the Yuanxi star in the future, thus revealing his former human body again. The premise of all this is the amount of god particles. Chapter 7 Future Choices. The number of god particles will determine whether Lee Heo, the so-called invincible god, can truly run rampant in the universe. And god particles are the evolution of material particles, so if you want to increase god particles, you must plunder material particles, that is, continue Lee Heo's previous work and mine in the meteorite group. However, unlike before when the star gravity was not born, if Lee Heo wants to approach the meteorite group again, he needs more complicated preparations. For example, how to attract a meteorite in the meteorite group into the gravitational range of the Yuanxi star, and not let other meteorites follow. This will be a more tricky process. It's like how to take a woman away from her brothers and sisters, and make her brothers and sisters unable to find it. The gravitational range is like the protagonist halo of the star, which naturally attracts all kinds of troubles, and it is different from the protagonist halo that can only attract star-level enemies in the later stage. Lee Heo's protagonist halo can constantly attract weak stars in the early stage, and the more tricky part of Lee Heo's protagonist halo is that it attracts the weak in the submission to the strong. For a star, gravity is its greatest weapon, but also its greatest trouble. With gravity, it means that you can fight as soon as you meet. Without a gravitational contest, how can you take a star under your command and plunder the material particles possessed by the star? Therefore, for Lee Heo, he has a lot of preparations. First, Lee Heo needs to determine the location of his weak interference area by moving the Yuan-Shi star. Then Lee Heo needs to include a meteorite in the meteorite group into his weak interference area. Finally, take it away and let it circle in his weak interference area, just like the moon to the earth. After completing all this, a gluttonous feast is presented. On the Yuan-Shi star, Lee Heo reduced his source power by half. As a result, he obtained a large number of God particles that were diffused near the Yuan-Shi star. These thin God particles formed the first layer of protection of the Yuan-Shi star, allowing Lee Heo to appear on the surface of the Yuan-Shi star for a short time. But who is Lee Heo? Lee Heo has the standard skills of an earthling, and he won't release his eagle until he sees a rabbit. Without really making sure that he can safely appear in Yuan-Shi star, Lee Heo will never take risks. After completing the propagation and transformation of God particles, Yuan-Shi star began to slowly approach the meteorite group that once chased him like a thief in the void of the universe. 3 steps forward, 2 steps back, and repeating continuously, finally tested the gravitational range of Yuan-Shi star. Under the operation of this program, Yuan-Shi star moved closer to the meteorite group in the universe with a strange pace, and as time went by, when he saw that the meteorites in the meteorite group had obvious signs of accelerated movement, Lee Heo controlled Yuan-Shi star to retreat 5 steps away quickly. Then he waited for the meteorite to sail to a certain extent at a fixed speed towards the cosmic position where Lee Heo was, and Lee Heo approached again. When you attract a woman's attention through your aura and let her leave her big family automatically, the next job is to show your talents, show your charm, and completely capture the woman's heart. But for the stars, a waltz of death is indispensable. Fortunately, when Lee Heo was dancing the waltz of death, he didn't need to consider the gravity of the meteorite, but only needed to pay attention to the size of his own gravity. In the boundless and vast dark universe, Lee Heo constantly fine-tuned the angle of the meteorite through the God particles in the weak interference area. Let it hover near the Yuan-Shi star at its own rhythm. This process is very long, and if you are not careful, the waltz of death will really make Lee Heo step into death. The love of the stars is hot, either fusion or death together. After a long time of adjustment, the meteorite finally slowly circled near the Yuan-Shi star. At this time, as long as Lee Heo did not move around, this state would continue. Looking at the meteorite that was constantly rotating around him, Lee Heo was not thinking about swallowing material particles at this time. Instead, he was thinking about whether he could be surrounded by a large number of stars while moving. It must be said that this idea is very bold compared to other stars in the universe. Lee Heo, an unstable and active person, wanted to achieve this. In the process of fast movement and rapid turning, he still maintained his attraction to the stars. This was a very difficult thing. But isn't the so-called goal to be achieved? Through the God particles in the weak interference area, Lee Heo continuously transmitted the material particles in the meteorite to the Yuan-Shi star, and began his own growth process. However, converting material particles into God particles is a program. Since it is a program, it means that Lee Heo can completely let it run on its own. No mistakes. 1 post, 1 content, 1 6, 1 9, 1 book, 1 bar, 1 look. So, Lee Heo was idle again. Quiet time is good for thinking, and thinking can discover more problems and find solutions. When the material particles were transformed into God particles in an orderly manner, a new question emerged in Lee Heo's mind. That is, whether to give up his freedom and choose a star as a source of light for the Yuan-Shi star and the origin of life, or continue to wander in the universe, simulate the existence of the sun through God particles, and then form an alternative world inside the Yuan-Shi star. This choice will mean that in the next hundreds of thousands or even tens of millions of years, Lee Heo will be in a static state or a moving state. It also means whether Lee Heo chooses to start from scratch with nothing, or become a rich second generation with a net worth of billions. It is not a simple matter to breed life. It often means the passage of hundreds of thousands or even tens of millions of years. From the initial origin of life to the development of life groups, this will be a long process that cannot be added. Lee Heo thought again and again, and finally laughed dumbly. Why consider so much? I'm destined to be a capitalist. I actually have to consider how to create production value. This is really a ridiculous joke. If there is no life, then just drop it. Weak life cannot exist in the Yuanshi star, so why not just plunder strong life? Anyway, capitalist society is, to some extent, an elite society. It's just eliminating the weak and keeping the strong. After figuring this out, Lee Heo instantly felt happy. If you're listening to this novel on a channel other than Fanfic World, it means they downloaded and uploaded it without effort. We cordially invite you to visit our channel, Mundo Fanfic Novelos. There you'll find the original version of this story and you can explore many other novels of various genres. We're waiting for you to immerse yourself in a world of incredible novels. Chapter 8 Planetary Crystal Wall Layer. On the Yuanshi star, a large number of material particles transported from the meteorite were transformed and split by the source force. Then they became the omnipotent god particles, filling the entire interference area. The meteorite, whose material particles were stolen, was rapidly decreasing at a speed visible to the naked eye. Of course, this rapid decrease is from the perspective of the stars. For ordinary life, such as human beings, the speed of the star's decrease is calculated in stages of hundreds of years. In order to ensure that the source force possessed by the Yuanshi star is the total of all god particles from beginning to end, Lee Heo divided all the converted material particles into two parts. Half of it was converted into source force, as the original power of the Yuanshi star. Just like the equivalent metal in the bank, it would not be easily used. The other half was completely converted into god particles as a means for Lee Heo to interfere with the material level. This can not only consolidate the foundation, but also continue to expand, which can be called a mature and prudent method. Lee Heo sensed that a large number of material particles were constantly converted into source force and a large number of god particles, and thought about his next move. It is not an easy task to plunder the life forms that have evolved and bred on other planets for tens of millions of years. Just like if you want an elite to leave his country on his own initiative, you have to give him enough temptation. Whether it is money or power, it is just a kind of temptation. If Lee Heo wants to plunder the elites on the planets with mature life by gentle means, he must create this temptation on the Yuanshi star. Just like the temptation of the United States to capitalists, China is the same temptation to African refugees. Of course, Lee Heo is not a philanthropist, and the Yuanshi star does not need too many ordinary lives. With the special environment on the Yuanshi star, only the strong who are combined with the god particle can survive on the Yuanshi star. A large number of god particles that permeate the Yuanshi star began to gather under Lee Heo's control, thus constructing a defensive measure in the void around the Yuanshi star. At this time, Lee Heo is still very weak to those powerful stars. What if he is attacked by the life forms on the powerful stars while wandering in the universe? Therefore, Lee Heo needs a measure to hide the Yuanshi star. Robbers without a fig leaf are easily beaten. Out of the two needs of hiding in the universe and building a planetary worldview, Lee Heo used a large number of god particles to simulate the surrounding cosmic void and built a crystal wall layer around the core interference area of the Yuanshi star. The god particles transformed from material particles filled the entire Yuanshi star. Above the Yuanshi star, the bottom layer of all material forms is composed of god particles. God particles constitute all the landscapes above the Yuanshi star, and a crystal wall layer that can hide the Yuanshi star and prevent the god particles from escaping quickly is built on the periphery of the Yuanshi star. The crystal wall layer is a kind of space-folding existence between the strong interference area and the core interference area. The existence of the crystal wall layer absorbs the material particles transmitted from the strong interference area. Part of these material particles are transformed into source power as the reserve source of the Yuanshi star. Part of them are transformed into god particles and enter the Yuanshi star, expanding the world area of the Yuanshi star and the various natural structures within the planetary crystal wall layer. Just like simulating the sun that shines on everything, or simulating the river that nourishes everything, the God particle is omnipotent, but Lee Hao's knowledge reserve is not omnipotent. If Lee Hao wants to fill the Yuan-Shi star with all kinds of natural wonders, he must observe the structure of the stars in the universe, and the various wonders on the stars, so as to use the God particle to simulate the existence of those wonders, and enrich the natural scenery of the Yuan-Shi star. Understand the wind, construct the wind, and let the Yuan-Shi star be filled with the breath of wind. Understand the water, construct the water, and let the Yuan-Shi star be filled with the breath of water. Understand the stars, construct the stars, so that the light of the stars can shine on the Yuan-Shi star anytime and anywhere, providing the Yuan-Shi star with the power of life. And the realization of all this requires Lee Hao to wander around in the universe, just like the light-chasing civilization, observing various natural phenomena in the universe, so as to understand everything. As time passed quickly, the meteorite group near Lee Hao had been basically transformed by the Yuan-Shi star. A large number of material particles were transformed into source power and God particles. The existence of this power gave Lee Hao the capital to plunder. The transformation of God particles requires the consumption of soul particles, and the growth of soul particles requires history as nourishment. It is unrealistic for Lee Hao to create history alone, so if he wants to make soul particles grow rapidly and then speed up the transformation of God particles, he must look for history. And what can create history the most is war. And war requires capital, the participation of life, and the plunder of human hands. Now, Lee Hao has the capital for war, but no manpower to plunder. No mistakes. One post, one content, 1619, one book, one bar, one look. So find a planet with life, plunder the life on the planet, and strengthen the original star. As the meteorite group was completely digested, Lee Hao's system panel at this time, name, Lee Hao age, gender, star level, small planet source power. 70 talents, fusion, movement, perspective, gravity heavenly power, God's perspective God's particle. In the empty universe, the light of the stars shuttles through the dark universe, and in the darkness of the universe, a small planet is gradually disappearing in the universe. The crystal wall layer built around the original star is gradually changing, and the transparent crystal wall layer begins to simulate the dark universe. The God particle simulates the dynamic environment in the void, like a chameleon, and merges with the universe, thus achieving the purpose of invisibility. After a while, the original star directly merges with the universe environment. Even the light of the stars cannot observe the existence of the original star, as if the original star does not exist in the universe at all. After completing the invisibility, the original star is like an accelerating train, sailing towards the nearest star. It is unrealistic to want to directly see the existence of planets in the universe, because the planets themselves do not emit light. Therefore, only by reaching the star system can we observe whether there are life planets in the universe through the light of the stars. This process will take a long time. The distance in the universe is measured in light years, and Lee Hao cannot travel at the speed of light. So this is another endless time travel. Chapter 9 The Primordial Star System. In the vast universe, Yuan-Shi star is sailing in the universe like a ghost. In the interference area around Yuan-Shi star, it plays its role with all its strength, and a large number of God particles keep jumping out of the weak interference area. However, it is taken back by Yuan-Shi star that passes by quickly, and then repeats the process again. Outside the interference area under the God's perspective, is the unknown area, that Lee Hao cannot observe. In these unknown areas, no one knows what will be hidden. If Lee Hao is not careful, he may be buried directly in the trap of the universe. So for the sake of his own life, Lee Hao continuously launches the existence of God particles in the area where Yuan-Shi star is going to pass, and let God particles serve as his scouts in the universe. To avoid Yuan-Shi star sailing directly into the universe trap, God particles are the eyes of God's perspective. Wherever there are God particles, they can convey information to Lee Hao at the fastest speed, so as to avoid danger. But this approach is not unbreakable. The reason why Lee Hao divides his interference area into 3 areas is because of the connection between God particles. The closer the God particle is to the Yuan-Shi star, the more active the God particle is, and the greater the effect it can exert. Once the distance between the God particle and the Yuan-Shi star is too far, the God particle will gradually lose its activity and become an ordinary material particle. Of course, the time when the God particle loses its activity is not permanent. As long as the Yuan-Shi star approaches again, the God particle will regain its activity again. However, after the God particle loses its activity, it does not mean that the God particle has lost its function. It will only interfere with the material level before, and then become an extension of the God's perspective. Under Ligeio's control, the God particles in the weak interference area are like cannonballs. A large number of them are launched, and after a period of space travel, they become the eyes of the Yuan-Shi star. After confirming that there is no danger ahead, the Yuan-Shi star will accelerate again. After reaching the farthest location of the God particle will be launched again to start the next step of reconnaissance. With this method, Ligeio constantly avoids dangers in the universe and shuttles towards the star closest to him. After an unknown amount of time, when Ligeio slowed down the Yuan-Shi star again, Ligeio had already reached the edge of the star system. One step forward would be the gravitational range of the star system. Once he entered the gravitational range of the star system, it would be difficult for Ligeio to escape the gravitational pull of the star system. If he entered the star system in the wrong way, there was a high probability that Ligeio would be directly dragged into the star by the gravitational pull of the star system and become a wisp of firework on the star. Looking at the huge star in front of him and the 5 planets circling around the star, Ligeio breathed a sigh of relief and said, "I'm so lucky. I didn't expect that the first star system would allow me to find the existence of a planet with life. I thought it would take tens of thousands of years to find it." At this time, Ligeio could no longer accurately compare the time on Earth with the time in this universe. The so-called tens of thousands of years was just a colloquialism by Ligeio to express his lament for the length of time. As my first milestone, this star system is just called the primordial star system. As for the life planet in this star system, it will be called the primordial star. Without anyone's consent, Ligeio gave this star system and the life planet in the star system their names. Primordial, everything begins. Primordial, chaos and ignorance. From this naming, it can be clearly seen that Ligeio has placed himself in an extremely high position. There are a total of 5 huge planets in the primordial star system. At least compared to the primordial star, each of these planets is incredibly large. However, among these 5 planets, only the 3rd planet of the primordial star system, that is, the primordial star, has traces of life. As for the other planets, they can be called dead stars. There is no trace of the existence of soul particles. Under the cover of the crystal wall layer, the primordial star is like a ghost star, wandering around the primordial star system, looking for a way to enter the primordial star system and get out again. This time, Ligeio's idea of entering the primordial star system is to go from a special angle, approaching the primordial star at the closest distance. After completing the placement of the God particles inside the primordial star, it quickly escaped from the gravitational pull of the primordial star system, and then once again got rid of the interference of the primordial star system on itself. The implementation of any plan requires a lot of intelligence as a prerequisite. Without any mistakes, 1 poem, 1 post, 1 content, 1 6, 1 9, 1 book, 1 bar. Take a look. Before knowing the specific situation of the primordial star, Ligeio did not intend to throw all his old capital into it. This close contact was not only to see the situation inside the primordial star clearly, but also to pave the way for his next contact. The ghost-like primordial star kept circling around the primordial star system, looking for a path to cut into the primordial star system. But it must be said that the galaxy gravity composed of stars and 5 planets is really a huge trouble. A large number of God particles constantly simulated the operation time of the primordial star system inside the primordial star. Explore the operation laws of the primordial star system and find the best time to cut in from these laws. This is an extremely patient job, which is boring, but you can't relax at all. If one data is wrong, it is very likely that Ligeio will directly enter the star and reincarnate again. Because this matter concerns his own life, even if the God particle can simulate the operation of the original star system by itself, and record these fixed laws, Lihao dare not relax at all. Inside the Yuanxi star, half of the God particles form a model of the original star system, calculating the laws in it. In order to ensure the correctness of the answer, Lihao even calculated it himself. Half of the God particles form nearly 1,000 star system models. The calculation methods between these star system models are mutually blocked, and the laws of the star system are calculated from 1,000 different angles, to ensure the accuracy of the results. The laws of the universe are different from those philosophies that are subject to subjective judgment by life. The laws of the universe are extremely accurate without the interference of external objects. Every time the final results of the star system model in the Yuanxi star are obtained, they will be compared. As long as there is a mistake, they will all be overturned. According to such rigorous steps, after 365,000 solar reincarnations on the Hangliang star, the preparations for this time were finally completed. On an auspicious day, Lihao drove the Yuanxi star and began to cut into the original star system. Chapter 10 God Particle Transmission. The Yuanxi star, which could not be illuminated by the light of the stars, slowly cut into the original star system at a strange angle and began to approach the Hangliang star. A large number of God particles set out from the core interference area and moved towards the weak interference area. The God particles gathered in the weak interference area and forcibly raised the weak interference area to the level of the strong interference area in a short period of time. At the outermost edge, the gravity emitted by the Yuanxi star, with the help of the gravitational entanglement formed by the gravity of the original star system, continued to move towards the edge of the Hangliang star. According to the results obtained by countless data calculations, this time Lihao's Yuanxi star will pass by the edge of the Hangliang star. It will start to contact the Hangliang star from the weak interference area and arrive at the location of the strong interference area 500 years after the Hangliang star, and continue to move at this position for 3 years to receive the powerful life on the Hangliang star. After 3 years, the Yuanxi star will gradually move away from the Hangliang star, and the first exploration action will be completed. As everything is being promoted according to Lihao's plan, Lihao's first step in interfering with the Hangliang star, the release of God particles, officially begins. Time keeps moving towards the future. With the edge of the weak interference area of the Yuanxi star, it officially touches the edge of the atmosphere of the Hangliang star. A large number of God particles fall into the interior of the Hangliang star through the connection between the two. The characteristic of the source force is that it can make life with soul particles more easily control the material particles existing in nature, and use the source force as a lever to pry natural energy to achieve the purpose of calling the wind and rain and immortality. Although the God particle is one energy level lower than the source force, the gap between the God particle and the source force is not that big. By comparing the advantages and disadvantages of the source force and the God particle, the benefits of the God particle to life are undoubtedly greater. The difference between the source force and the God particle is like the apple in nature, compared to the artificially planted apple. One is randomly produced and can be encountered but not sought, and the other is specially produced. As long as the conditions are met, there are as many as you want. Isn't there a saying that the suitable one is the best? The source force is the active adaptation of life, while the God particle is the passive adaptation of life. Swallowing source power may cause adverse reactions, such as poisoning or inability to be supplemented, but God particles will not have such a situation. As long as you don't commit suicide, all directions of God particles are evolving in a good direction. After all, what Lihao wants is a material structure diagram that can form a template, not a random mutation and natural selection. With the influx of God particles, the entire planet seems to come alive, full of active vitality everywhere. This vitality makes the life on the Hangliang star seem to be relieved. If the Hangliang star was dead silent before, after the God particles poured into the Hangliang star, it seemed that even the air became fresh. This is because, compared with the rigid material particles, God particles are extremely active. The activity of God particles drives the rigid material particles in the Hangliang star. let these rigid material particles move, thus bringing a lot of vitality to the entire Han Huang star. However, the activity of God particles depends entirely on the distance of the Yuanxi star. As the Yuanxi star gradually approaches, the material particles in the entire Han Huang star will become more active. The influx of God particles at this time only makes the air in the prehistoric star fresher and the life energy more abundant. As time goes by, the closer the Yuanxi star is, the more active the God particles are, and the faster the material particles in the prehistoric star will be in turmoil. Imagine what will happen as all the material particles move under the action of God particles. The flame can be easily ignited, the physical fitness of life is rapidly improved, and the energy contained in the blood continues to increase. By that time, this world can already be called the age of gods and demons. It is true that it is unrealistic to want to exert the power of destroying the world with a carbon-based body, but don't forget that in the material world, every material form composed of material particles has never been isolated from each other. In the universe, from stars to ants, they are all composed of material particles. In essence, the entire universe is the same particle form. It's just that in the process of cosmic evolution, these particles form different material structures. Water and fire are enemies of life and death and cannot coexist. However, if water and fire are split layer by layer, they will eventually be split into the material particle stage. However, if the material particles of the two are mixed, water and fire will be formed again. In this way, who can say that water and fire are incompatible? The same is true for carbon-based life forms. From a macroscopic perspective, the body of a carbon-based life form does not have the conditions to destroy the world. But from the perspective of microscopic particles, everything is very simple. There are various trace metal elements in the human body. If these metal elements are slightly increased, the energy level of the human body will not be improved. Of course, if there is no correct operation method, it is easy to cause metal poisoning. The existence of God particles solves this problem. From the perspective of microscopic particles, active God particles are introduced into the body of the life form, thus becoming a special energy to maintain the evolution of the life form. In the case that Li Hao does not interfere with the God particles will automatically move closer to the soul particles in the life form. In the end, the God particles and the soul particles of life combine to become an alternative source of power, a source of power that Li Hao secretly controls. When Li Hao does not actively interfere with the operation of the God particles, these God particles combined with the soul particles will automatically optimize the material structure within the life form. And without destroying the original material structure, the trace metal element in the air are extracted from nature. In this way, the carbon-based life form will have an energy level that can destroy the world. And the God particles are where Li Hao's eyes are. The God particles are integrated into the material body of the life form and combined with the soul particles of the life form. This means that Li Hao will exist in the origin of every life form, secretly controlling these lives that have been fused with the God particles, letting them dance in his palm. Moreover, Li Hao does not need to worry about the betrayal of the life form that has fused with the God particles, because the ability of the life form to pry natural energy is given by the God particles. Once the God particles are silent and no longer move under Li Hao's command, by then, even if those life forms that have fused with the God particles have the power to reach the sky, they will eventually become a weak chicken without the power to tie chicken. Moreover, these strong men who have merged with the God particle cannot leave the Yuanxi star too far away. Once they exceed the range of the weak interference zone, the activity of the God particle will disappear in an instant. No mistake. And the existence range of the God particle is generally in the universe. It can be imagined that a strong man who relies on the God particle to cross the universe will be suffocated to death in an instant after leaving the weak interference zone. This is really a beautiful picture. I dare not imagine it. Chapter 11 Weak Interference Region. Since Li Hao's Yuanxi star entered the original star system, the weak interference area has been in contact with the atmosphere of Han Huang star. As time goes by, the weak interference area will continue to overlap with Han Huang star, accelerating the activity of material particles in Han Huang star. and from the moment the weak interference area contacts Hang Huang star, the God particle jumps out of the weak interference area directly and then reaches the interior of Hang Huang star. The perspective provided by the God particle allows Li Hao to truly see all the landscapes inside Hang Huang star. The God particle jumps out of the weak interference area, and outside the weak interference area, it falls into the interior of Hang Huang star by inertia and gravity. The external God particle squeezes the stability maintained by the original material particles of Hang Huang star. When the number of God particles reaches a certain level, the stable material particle structure in Hang Huang star is shattered. Just like dropping a drop of water on a calm water surface, the entire Hang Huang star begins to become active. Life lies in movement. The movement of material particles can make the entire Hang Huang star full of active energy. These active energies can easily pry life, thus forming all kinds of magical powers. Hang Huang star is an extremely large planet. As for how large it is difficult to explain. It is at least hundreds of times larger than the original star. During his long journey, Li Hao had long forgotten the length of 1 meter on the Earth. It is a bit difficult for Li Hao to describe the area of Hang Huang star using the standard of the Earth. Hang Huang star is a planet in the prehistoric era. There is no trace of large-scale civilization here. Life is killing for survival from birth to death. There is no time to create history. Therefore, although there are soul particles on Hang Huang star, even if hundreds of years have passed, the growth rate of soul particles is just like that, not much faster. History is inherited in an orderly manner. Even if there is some false information in the history recorded by civilization, this part of false information can also be passed on through the power of civilization. Take the dinosaurs on the Earth, compared with primitive civilization. The dinosaurs competed with all the primitive civilizations in physical strength, but after hundreds of millions of years of evolution, the dinosaurs were still in a state of fighting for survival. Among dinosaurs, there is no existence that can record the knowledge of the previous generation and pass on its own history. The only thing that dinosaurs can pass on is the hunting experience of their parents and the genes that their parents have evolved for hundreds of millions of years. Compared with primitive civilization, in the primitive society that has formed a tribe, there is an existence that summarizes the experience of the previous generation and passes it on to the next generation. Under this kind of inheritance, the experience summarized by countless ancestors of the primitive tribe will not be lost, and the experience summarized by the primitive tribe of hundreds or even thousands of people, it will become the history of primitive civilization and be passed on for a long time in civilization. Strengthening the body is just a temporary win, but strengthening the inheritance of civilization can win in the future. If the dinosaurs still cannot cooperate and pass on history, then even if the dinosaurs have evolved for a billion years, they are just ordinary creatures restricted to the Earth's environment. And it is the same in the prehistoric star. The vast ocean, the vast land, and the vast sky, among these three, breed a large number of powerful creatures, but these powerful creatures have been fighting for survival. No life can sacrifice itself to provide conditions for recording history for other existences in the tribe. This can be said to be a kind of wisdom, but it can also be said to be a kind of stupidity. Winning in the present, losing the future. If it follows the normal evolution history of the prehistoric star, when a life in the prehistoric star raises the fire of inheritance, the doomsday of other creatures is gradually approaching. However, Li Hao's arrival completely broke the evolution history of the prehistoric star. One of the main reasons why civilization is difficult to be born is that civilization needs sacrifice, and fuel is added to the fire of civilization inheritance by sacrificing the lives of the strong. The first person who raised the torch, although not the strongest in the entire tribe, is the strongest in the entire tribe. No matter what his purpose is, when others shrink back, he bravely took the first step. This is the strong. There is no turning back for the development of civilization. Without the sacrifice and dedication of the strong, how can there be a direction for civilization to move forward? You can also say that civilization is composed of countless weak people, but if there is no strong exploration, no matter how many weak people there are, they are just headless flies. If the strong do not want to sacrifice and want civilization to continue to develop, there is only one way, that is to use external forces. As the weak interference area of the Yuan-Shi star approaches, the god particles that were previously placed in the Han-Huang star begin to play their role, and a large number of material particles are driven by the god particles to move. The god particles are like catfish thrown into a fish pond, driving the material particles to move, allowing the material particles to fully exert their vitality. When the god particles are constantly moving, the world is full of vitality. Between the breaths of life, you can feel your body gradually getting stronger. Every creature is approaching the limit of its own race, and the cells in the body are like being filled with energy and begin to evolve. In the boundless ocean, this is the origin of life. In the ocean, there are a large number of marine creatures. After the god particles enter the Han-Huang star, every place in the ocean is full of active energy. This energy can fill the stomach of a life in a short time, so that it does not have to fight and eat under the drive of hunger. Sufficient energy shortens the time it takes to fill one's stomach, reduces the fierce fighting in the ocean, and allows the entire ocean to regain its calm. From this perspective, it seems that the prehistoric planet has finally recovered from the endless fighting, and the world is full of peaceful times. However, the actual situation is just the opposite. Sufficient food has become the soil for the breeding of desires, although most creatures want to live a life of eating and sleeping, and eating. However, there are always some aliens in the world that are different. They hate a peaceful life. They like to pursue a life of excitement. They hate the unchanging. They bring changes. They set off waves, and then create history. They are the strong. In the endless deep ocean, a sea snake has just swallowed a fat little fish. What is different from the past is that in the past, this sea snake needed to hunt 10 small fish to ensure that its existence would not perish. But now, just a small fish is enough to make it full. The remaining time in this process gives the sea snake an alternative idea. What should I do next? Chapter 12. Heaven and Earth Vitality. On Earth, what is the most terrifying thing for humans? It is not the outbreak of a biochemical crisis, nor the rise of a world nuclear war, but the appearance of another thinking race on Earth. The Earth is too small to accommodate the existence of a second intelligent race. And it is the same in the prehistoric star. Among the beasts that are fighting to fill their stomachs on the entire prehistoric star, or thinking life suddenly appears. What a terrifying thing this is. It can almost be said that when this thinking sea snake forms its own logical thinking, the doomsday countdown of other creatures in the prehistoric star will start. If it follows the normal history of the evolution of prehistoric civilization, when a life shows signs of thinking, it will inevitably look for the same kind with the same signs as itself, and then form a civilization. Driven by the years, it plunders the living space of other life groups step by step, and after countless generations of sacrifice, it finally completes the historical process and pushes the descendants of the sea snake into the civilized era. However, everything is abnormal now. The thinking of the sea snake is not natural, but is induced by the god particle and born. Normal civilization evolution history is based on millions of years, but under the effect of god particles, this period of civilization evolution history will be greatly shortened. After the sea snake was full and thinking about its future, in the original star system, Li Hao on the Yuan-Shi star was observing the interference of god particles on the Han-Huang star. After the god particles entered the Han-Huang star, the material particles in the Han-Huang star moved, thus forming a vibrant world. As the Yuan-Shi stars approached, the energy level in the Han-Huang star would continue to rise, and it seemed that everything was in line with the prelude to the evolution of the god and demon era. However, through Li Hao's careful observation, it was found that the energy level in the Han-Huang star was indeed rising. But this rising trend is absolutely impossible to reach the level that allows the life in the Han-Huang star to cross the distance of the universe and come to the Yuan-Shi star after 500 years. There are two reasons why Li Hao traveled through the original star system this time. One is to collect the specific situation in the Han-Huang star. The other is to make some extra money, search for material particles on the prehistoric star, and upgrade the Yuan-Shi star. But the work of searching for material particles cannot be done by Li Hao himself, and the life on the prehistoric star must deliver it. As for why Of course, it is because Li Hao dare not move at all. From the moment the Yuanxi star entered the original star system, the gravitational entanglement between the original star system and the Yuanxi star has begun. Once the position of the Yuanxi star is slightly off, it will either be destroyed by humanity or turned into a satellite. Everything was calculated well, but something pitiful happened. The energy level of the prehistoric star could not meet expectations. There was no courier to deliver the goods. Li Hao would lose a lot on this adventure. The reason for all this is that the number of God particles is too scarce, and in the early stage, the God particles must be spread to the entire prehistoric star to expand the base number of strong people born. Combined with these difficulties, it is really a fantasy to want to raise the energy level of the prehistoric star to the point where the body can cross the void of the universe in just 500 years. Li Hao looked at the various loopholes exposed after sorting out and couldn't help but sigh and said, people are not omnipotent after all. We still have to do things down to earth. Discovering problems and solving problems are the fundamentals of strength. Then, Li Hao began to carry out the reform plan of God particles. Since God particles are rare and cannot raise the energy level of Hong Huang star to the standard level, it is enough to lower the energy level of God particles by one level again, so as to obtain more energy. In this universe, the most powerful energy level is the source force, and the second class energy level is artificial energy such as God particles. If the God particles are slightly diluted, a larger amount of energy can be obtained. The energy level of this energy is at the third energy level, and Li Hao named it the spiritual energy of heaven and earth. According to Li Hao's observation, the energy levels in the universe are divided into 4 energy levels. The first energy level of source force, the second energy level of God particles, and the third energy level of spiritual energy, plus the fourth energy level of material energy. These 4 energy levels constitute the energy division in the universe. As for how this energy level is divided, the key lies in the degree of fusion of soul particles and material particles. Source force is the most essential energy, which is composed of soul particles and material particles of the same degree, while God particles are reduced to the second energy level through dilution. By analogy, the fourth energy level is pure material particles. The ratio of soul particles and material particles of God particles is slightly reduced, and Li Hao easily obtains a more powerful ability. Although this energy is of no use to Li Hao, it is the most suitable for those beasts in the state of ignorance. Compared with source force and God particles are naturally more suitable for life to absorb, and compared with God particles and the spiritual energy of heaven and earth, the spiritual energy of heaven and earth is naturally easier to be absorbed by life. As for the material energy at the lowest energy level in the universe, this energy exists in the largest number and the widest range in the universe, but the energy that can be provided to life is only the most basic level. Material energy is a dead energy that can maintain the survival of life, but cannot start the evolution of the essence of life, so it can only be reduced to the lowest energy level. On the Yuanxi star, as Li Hao began to transform the God particle, the God particles of the entire Yuanxi star began to combine with the material particles. Through constant comparison, the most suitable ratio equation for the spiritual energy of heaven and earth was obtained. Just like the formula of explosives, by adding and fusing in a certain proportion, the God particles can be diluted, thus giving birth to a huge amount of spiritual energy of heaven and earth with a lower energy level. This reform plan of the God particle was carried out very quickly. Under the premise of having a goal and an execution plan, all Li Hao had to do was to repeat the experimental comparison. Not long after, the first sample of the spiritual energy of heaven and earth appeared on the Yuanxi star. Looking at this colorless and odorless transparent spiritual energy, Li Hao frowned slightly and said, "It is indeed a low energy." As soon as it appeared, it was able to pull the surrounding God particles down a level. It seems that on the Yuanxi star, it is really not suitable for the existence of spiritual energy. In this case, let's synthesize it directly on the Hong Huang star. As Li Hao's thoughts moved, on the Hong Huang star, the God particles in the weak interference area began to merge with the material particles on the Hong Huang star. A large number of God particles were reduced in energy level, thus releasing a large amount of spiritual energy. These spiritual energies formed by the combination of Hang Huang star material particles and God particles quickly spread over Hang Huang star. No mistake, one post, one content, 1619, one book, one bar. Just like ink dripping into water, the spiritual energy at the third energy level was quickly diluted by the fourth energy level of material energy, and then spread over the entire Hang Huang star. Compared with the scarcity of God particles, the spiritual energy seems to be more than enough. Chapter 13 The Evolution of Sea Snakes. After being diluted, the God particles quickly spread in the prehistoric star. Of course, these God particles have now been named by Li Hao as the spiritual energy of heaven and earth. On the bottom of the ocean, a slender black sea snake swam in the sea water, and its streamlined body caused waves. In the past, after this sea snake had eaten and drunk enough, it would find a place to sleep well until the next time its stomach sent out a signal of hunger. Only then would this sea snake wake up from sleep and continue the next hunt. This regular life would continue until the end of the sea snake's life. And now, under the stimulation of the spiritual energy of heaven and earth, the sea snake that once lived regularly broke the rules and chains that bound itself in the past, and began to wander aimlessly in the ocean. As the sea snake continued to swim, the spiritual energy of heaven and earth entered the body of the sea snake with its breathing, filling the cells in the body of the sea snake, allowing the body quality of the sea snake to continue to grow towards the limit of the race. Life lies in movement. The sea snake swam around in the endless ocean, out of its former hunting range, out of the most suitable ecological environment chosen by nature. In this aimless swimming, the sea snake hunted in unfamiliar environments, devoured fresh lives that had never been seen before, and stored the material gene structure of these fresh lives in its body. According to normal logic, sea snakes that leave their ecological environment without authorization will be punished by nature after a period of time and buried in unfamiliar waters. This is not the will of the ocean, but just because of the incompatibility of the water and soil. A strange species suddenly broke into an unfamiliar area and devoured the food in the unfamiliar area without scruples. Generally, the life that does this will pay the price of life for its recklessness and teach other lives with bloody lessons about the punishment for not abiding by the rules of the game. However, although the wandering sea snakes swallowed a large number of unknown species, the destruction of these unknown species has not yet begun, and they are directly cleared out by the spiritual energy of heaven and earth flowing in the sea snakes. The rules set by Li Hao for the spiritual energy of heaven and earth are to try not to interfere with the host's material body structure, under the premise of keeping the host's material body structure intact. Find a way to merge with the host's soul particles, and under a last resort, allow the spiritual energy of heaven and earth to remove harmful factors in the host's body and retain beneficial factors in the host's body. Under such rules, the spiritual energy of heaven and earth is like a program, ignoring the sea snake's eating, waiting for the changes of these foods in the sea snake's body. If it is a good change, then copy it and transmit it to Li Hao. And if it is a change that can destroy the host's material body and cause the host's death, then remove the harmful substances and also upload a copy of the information that caused the host's death. It looks complicated, but in fact, there are only two tasks for the spiritual energy of heaven and earth. One is to integrate into the soul of every life, and the other is to use life as an experimental field, and then monitor the changes in the life template of life, retain the good, and remove the bad. Before the spiritual energy of heaven and earth came, the life template of the sea snake was just a very ordinary sea snake, and there was no difference from its peers. However, after the spiritual energy of heaven and earth came, this unique sea snake, after absorbing the spiritual energy of heaven and earth, embarked on a different path. Unlike its peers, who abide by the rules of the ocean, this sea snake chose to step out of its old ecological environment and go to unknown seas. In the same period of time, the evolution of this unique sea snake has far surpassed its peers. It can be said that after passing through the wandering sea, this sea snake and its previous peers are no longer a species. If the ocean is a food chain with strict rules, then every marine life is a part of the food chain. They abide by the ecological environment selected by nature for them. Those who jump out of the food chain will face death. Countless deaths firmly maintain the operation of this food chain, restricting all life in the ocean to the ocean. After the spiritual energy of heaven and earth came, these marine organisms absorbed a large amount of spiritual energy. In theory, with the maintenance of these spiritual energies, as long as the danger is not too difficult to resist, these spiritual energies will automatically clean up for the host. With this guarantee, it means that the food chain that has been maintained in the ocean for millions of years has the possibility of a breakthrough. However, due to long-term inertia, most of the life in the ocean still abides by the old food chain. Just like the baby elephant that was bound by iron chains in childhood, the solidity of the iron chain firmly bound the baby elephant's freedom in the baby elephant's will. So when the baby elephant grows up, it still can't get rid of the iron chain in its heart. And now, in the ocean, the same is true. The old food chain firmly binds the freedom of marine life, making it unable to break free, and can only obey. In this silent environment, any creature that dares to get rid of the old food chain and move towards a new world will be favored by luck and become the trend of the times. As for luck, that is another rule set by Lihao for spiritual energy. Any life that does not abide by the old rules and puts them into practice will naturally attract spiritual energy to gather in its direction. This is the way luck favors. Of course, since there is the favor of luck, there will naturally be disasters to block it. However, this disaster was not set up by Lihao. Lihao is not so idle. This disaster is a counterattack from the old rules and order. If you survive, you will naturally get more luck, and if you can't survive, you will naturally die. Luck favors those restless lives, but at the same time, the old rules will continue to target those who do not abide by the rules. There are only two choices for lives that violate the rules and order. These two choices are just like what the rebels did to the ancient court. Kill, set fire, and accept the imperial edict. Or overthrow the old order and rebuild a new order. The former obtains the protection of the rules of order, but will lose the favor of luck, and be equal to all living beings from then on. The latter, who is favored by luck, will be hunted down by the rules and order. No mistakes. One song, one post, one content, 1/6, one book, one bar, and one look. Life lies in movement. Anyone who yearns for the extraordinary and takes action will be favored by luck. Anyone who abides by the rules and yearns for an ordinary life will be treated equally by luck. And now, this sea snake that keeps wandering in the ocean is a character favored by luck. A large amount of spiritual energy from heaven and earth spontaneously gathers in the body of the sea snake, maintaining the material body structure of the sea snake. The more spiritual energy, the more it can pull the crazy sea snake from the brink of death. At this time, the sea snake that jumped out of the old food chain is being counterattacked by the old food chain in the ocean. The stronger the sea snake, the stronger this counterattack. This is also not the so-called will of the ocean. It is just because the sea snake broke into the hunting territory of other marine life, and the existence of the sea snake threatens the life safety of local marine life. No life will like a bad thing that steals things from itself. Chapter 14 The Formation of the Enodan. When the sea snake rashly stepped into the unknown area and kept fighting with the local marine life, the spiritual energy in the sea snake's body is also constantly maintaining the material body structure of the sea snake, so that the sea snake will not swallow a large number of unknown genes, which will lead to accidental death. And these material genes swallowed by the sea snake evolve in the body of the sea snake, changing the original life template in the body of the sea snake, without causing death. The evolution of the sea snake continues. In the deep sea area, where the light of the stars cannot completely illuminate the deep sea area, the sea snake moves its slender body of tens of meters, winding and circling in the ocean. The shadow caused by the huge body obscures the light at the bottom of the ocean, and the fierce breath exuded from the body intimidates the sea area, where the sea snake is. Let countless marine creatures tremble under the threat of the sea snake. The sea snake looked at the black-scaled sea fish that was entangled to death by its body, and a pair of cold eyes as big as a basin swept the surrounding sea area, alert to the possible dangers around. The black-scaled sea fish is a predator in this sea area. It occupies the top of the food chain in this sea area all year round and regards all creatures in this sea area as food in its mouth. Before the 3 rays of light passed through the ocean, the sea snake suddenly broke into the hunting area of the black-scaled sea fish and started killing within its hunting range, constantly plundering the wealth of the black-scaled sea fish. This shameless behavior made the black-scaled sea fish angry. As the saying goes, cutting off someone's wealth is like killing their parents. This hatred is irreconcilable. Although the black-scaled sea fish does not know this sentence, the black-scaled sea fish feels the same at this time. The power of nature is great. It has arranged fixed hunting grounds and natural enemies for all life in nature. As long as you honestly abide by the rules of nature and act according to the rules of nature's game, you can naturally ensure the continuity of the population. The hunting area provides materials for the survival of organisms, and the natural enemies are responsible for reducing the excess burden on the population. All of this is like a perfect cycle, ensuring the long-term operation of nature. Just like the game of chess, as the most powerful elephant, it can suppress all creatures, but it was defeated by the weakest mouse. Natural enemies and hunting areas constitute the guarantee of the food chain cycle, but now, the sudden sea snake has destroyed the cycle of this food chain. So what impact does the existence of sea snakes have on the food chain? Let's talk about it. The sea snake jumped out of its original area, causing the sea snake's natural enemies to lose some of their survival supplies, and these natural enemies who lost their survival supplies will starve to death. And the starving natural enemies will not be able to control the number of sea snakes. The increase in the number of sea snakes will affect the hunting area of sea snakes, thus causing the extinction of the sea snake hunting area. And by analogy, this influence will continue to spread until it is suppressed by another more powerful force. Originally, nature has the ability to adjust the abnormalities of the food chain, but the existence of the spiritual energy of heaven and earth has accelerated the intensity of this expansion force. Just like this sea snake that spans countless ocean areas, this sea snake hunted countless marine creatures, and the death of these marine creatures caused the food chain to break. Coupled with the influence of the spiritual energy of heaven and earth, in the near future, the entire food chain of nature will be reorganized. And this reorganization process is extremely bloody. Any bloody change that takes a long time is a policy that benefits the country and the people. And any mild change that takes a short time is a disaster for civilization. Just like the T-virus, stretching the transformation time of the T-virus to decades or even hundreds of years. Everyone will say that this is a miracle in the history of evolution. But the T-virus broke out in just one day or even a few hours. This fierce transformation directly caused the human gene to collapse, thus causing a disaster in the history of civilization. The evolutionary process that originally required millions of years was artificially accelerated thousands of times. It is conceivable what kind of fight will break out on the prehistoric star next. The black-scaled sea fish was entangled to death by the sea snake. The bones in the body were broken inch by inch under the death entanglement of the sea snake, and the internal organs were severely squeezed by the extremely huge force. After completing the killing of the black-scaled sea fish, the sea snake opened its bloody mouth and slowly swallowed the whole black-scaled sea fish into its mouth. Under the wriggling of its strong muscles, the black-scaled sea fish was pushed into the stomach of the sea snake little by little. The sea snake's body was allowed to digest. With the entry of the black-scaled sea fish, the sea snake's body began to undergo tremendous changes. During this period of time, the sea snake has been constantly devouring a large number of unknown creatures. The genes of these creatures merged with the original genes of the sea snake in the sea snake's body, causing the sea snake's genes to mutate. With the help of the spiritual energy of heaven and earth, the sea snake, which should have died due to poisoning or gene fragmentation, has successfully mutated again and again, from a slender sea snake at the beginning to a behemoth today. And now, with the entry of this black-scaled sea fish, just like a quantitative change causing a qualitative change, the sea snake began to evolve in all directions. A large number of unknown genes began to fill the weaknesses of the sea snake. As time went by, on the body of the sea snake, dense and tiny scales began to appear faintly. These dark scales strengthened the defense of the sea snake. In the body of the sea snake, the skeleton of the sea snake began to strengthen continuously, and the strengthened skeleton supported the new body of the sea snake. In this evolution, the sea snake, which originally had no teeth in its mouth, and could only swallow directly, began to grow countless sharp teeth. In the process of the evolution of the sea snake, the spiritual energy of heaven and earth did not do nothing. A large number of unknown genes impacted the original genes of the sea snake, making the original genes of the sea snake face shattering at any time, facing death at any time. The spiritual energy of heaven and earth constantly repaired the constantly broken genes of the sea snake in the body of the sea snake, thus ensuring the immortality of the sea snake. Under this continuous cycle of reorganization and destruction, the evolution of the sea snake has been continuing safely. The spiritual energy of heaven and earth has two tasks. One is to maintain the life safety of the host and allow the host to evolve without dying, and the other is to merge with the host's soul. The historical process of the evolution of the sea snake served as the soul nourishment of the sea snake. With the support of history, the soul particles of the sea snake began to increase continuously, and the increased soul particles began to instinctively look for material particles to combine with them, thus forming the source of life and existing as the origin of life. And under the situation of being close to the water and getting the moon first, the spiritual energy of heaven and earth that lingered in the sea snake's body and helped the sea snake evolve many times naturally acted as the fused material particles. Immediately, in the process of evolution, an inner pill formed by the combination of the spiritual energy of heaven and earth and soul particles took shape in the body of the sea snake. No mistake, one song, one post, one content, 1619, one book, one bar. Take a look. The spiritual energy of heaven and earth tightly wrapped the soul particles of the sea snake to ensure that all the increase of soul particles of the sea snake in the future will be combined with the spiritual energy of heaven and earth. Normally, the evolution of history has increased the soul particles of life, and the soul particles will instinctively look for material particles to combine. But this combination will not form the same existence as the inner pill in the body of life. Because material particles are dead, after the soul particles combine with them, the source force formed will not gather together. The source force is just the original energy to maintain the existence of life. In fact, the source force does not form the extraordinary ability to pry the material particles, because the material particles combined with the soul particles are dead and do not have the ability to activate, so the material particles in the outside world will not respond to the call of the source of life and thus have any changes. Only activated particles, such as God particles or the spiritual energy of heaven and earth, can form extraordinary power. Only when the soul particles are combined with these artificial particles can they mobilize the artificial particles in heaven and earth to form extraordinary power. As for the role of the source force, as long as the source force exists, the lifespan of life will not end. In fact, the reason why the lifespan is short is simply because there are not many soul particles in normal life, and the speed at which soul particles and material particles combine is really frustrating. For details, please refer to the time it took for Liheo to fuse the material particles in the first meteorite. The reason why Liheo was able to quickly devour the meteorite group later was simply because the birth of gravity accelerated this process. The reason why the inner elixir is formed in the sea snake is because the spiritual energy of heaven and earth actively merges with the soul particles of the sea snake, and in order to ensure that the soul particles of the sea snake can only combine with the spiritual energy of heaven and earth. Therefore, the spiritual energy of heaven and earth spontaneously gathered the soul particles of the sea snake together and formed a layer of protection around the origin of life, thus forming the inner elixir. At the same time, because of the connection between the spiritual energy of heaven and earth in the sea snake and the spiritual energy of heaven and earth in the outside world, after the inner elixir is formed in the sea snake, it can naturally mark the spiritual energy of heaven and earth in the outside world, thus becoming its own power. Then, it is to mobilize the power of heaven and earth with its own power, achieve extraordinary foundation. If you're listening to this novel on a channel other than Fanfic World, it means they downloaded and uploaded it without effort. We cordially invite you to visit our channel, Mundo Fanfic Novelos. There you'll find the original version of this story and you can explore many other novels of various genres. We're waiting for you to immerse yourself in a world of incredible novels. Chapter 59 All Living Beings. The violent genetic evolution is still continuing at the bottom of the ocean. The sea snakes at this time are almost two different forms from the previous species. Sharp teeth emerge from the upper and lower jaws of the sea snake, standing upright like sharp daggers, and dense black scales are neatly arranged on the sea snake's body. From a distance, it looks like a deep sea monster on the bottom of the sea. The evolved sea snake now has a sturdy body of hundreds of meters. It is not an exaggeration to call it a sea monster. At this time, the sea snake is called a sea snake, not a sea python. When the sea python evolves, the fusion of the spiritual energy of heaven and earth and the soul particles in its body is also continuing rapidly. Under the active fusion of the spiritual energy of heaven and earth, the combination between the soul particles and the spiritual energy of heaven and earth does not encounter any obstacles. Unlike material particles that are like dead objects, the activity of the spiritual energy of heaven and earth makes the soul particles almost passive. As long as there are extra soul particles, the spiritual energy of heaven and earth will rush to merge with them like grabbing food. This active form is like an adult man who has been imprisoned for more than 10 years and suddenly sees a woman. The state of hunger is simply crazy. On the Yuanxi star, Li Hao paid close attention to the development of Han Huang star and the movement of the spiritual energy of heaven and earth on Han Huang star. When he found that there was a large amount of spiritual energy gathering in the deep sea of the ocean area, Li Hao cast his eyes on the deep sea. God particles are where Li Hao's eyes are. Wherever there are God particles, that is where Li Hao's eyes are. As a derivative of God particles, the spiritual energy of heaven and earth. Naturally, it also has the ability to carry Li Hao's will. When the deep sea area changes, Li Hao's will quietly descended to the deep sea area. From the material level, Li Hao at this time has no possibility of crossing the distant universe distance and reaching Han Huang star. Even Li Hao dare not reach Han Huang star from the material level, because this is a dead end. Once captured by the gravity of the star, it will be really powerless. But from the level of the soul, Li Hao has the ability to descend on Han Huang star, but this kind of descent has great defects. At this time, the strong interference area of the Yuanxi star has not reached the edge of Han Huang star, and the power that Li Hao can exert on Han Huang star cannot reach a very high level. Once Li Hao's will descended body is destroyed by the native creatures of Han Huang star, it will cause great harm to Li Hao. The strength of Li Hao's ability to exert on Han Huang star depends on the amount of spiritual energy of heaven and earth on Han Huang star, as well as the activity of spiritual energy of heaven and earth. In the weak interference area, if Li Hao wants to improve his power level, he must gather a large amount of spiritual energy of heaven and earth to forge a powerful body, but this behavior itself is courting death. There is another term for the condensation of spiritual energy: natural treasures. If you want to exert a powerful force, you must condense a large amount of spiritual energy, and condensing a large amount of spiritual energy will inevitably attract more desperate people. Within the weak interference area, Li Hao's speed of condensing spiritual energy is limited, and this limitation will give those desperate people who covet natural treasures the courage to act. Just like the emperor of a human dynasty, in the palace, the emperor is the boss, and there are many guards in the palace. It is extremely difficult for assassins to break into the palace. However, once the emperor went on a private visit and the assassin learned of his whereabouts, once the assassin attacked, the emperor's safety would be greatly threatened due to the speed of the local army's mobilization. And Li Hao's descended body is like the emperor who went on a private visit. Once he was deliberately targeted, he would be easily killed by the native life on the prehistoric star due to the speed of mobilizing spiritual energy, and thus fall. As for imposing the forbidden magic field on the life that besieged him on the prehistoric star, it is not impossible, but all this takes time. Li Hao is in absolute control of the God particle, and the God particle is in absolute control of the spiritual energy. If Li Hao wants to cast the forbidden magic field, he must issue orders to the spiritual energy through the God particle, so that the spiritual energy will spontaneously reduce its activity, thereby abolishing the rebels' control over the spiritual energy. But again, it takes time. In the weak interference area, the time required for the God particle to issue orders to the spiritual energy is enough for those rebels to launch a fatal attack. Spiritual energy is a treasure of heaven and earth. Treasures of heaven and earth attract desperate people who don't care about their lives. Desperados kill Li Hao for the treasure of heaven and earth. According to the development of this process, in the end, it will only result in Li Hao being besieged by the native life of Han Huang star and then falling. Therefore, Li Hao will not easily come to Han Huang star. Even if he wants to come to Han Huang star, he must find something to cover it. Before the strong interference area comes, it is extremely dangerous for Li Hao to appear anywhere on Han Huang star. But fortunately, it is now in the initial stage of life evolution, and there is no life group with independent and complete wisdom on Han Huang star. and Li Hao did not gather too much spiritual energy with a large number of troops. So at this time, Li Hao's arrival on Hong Huang Star can be said to be the safest time. In the deep sea, a little spiritual energy gathered, and Li Hao's human-shaped phantom exuded a glittering brilliance in the ocean, as if sacred. The surrounding marine creatures are eager, but they are also timid, and crawling in place, not daring to move at all, even if their bodies are constantly sinking to the bottom of the sea. This is the difference between intelligent creatures and wild beasts. Wild beasts dare not resist powerful beings at all, and can only endure silently, even if the price of enduring is death. Although intelligent creatures are still afraid of powerful beings, when facing the death imposed by powerful beings, intelligent creatures will have a great probability of resisting, and even fighting to the death. Li Hao's indifferent eyes casually glanced at the creatures around him, and he no longer paid attention to the life and death of these beasts, but focused on the sea python in front of him. As the first creature whose soul particles were found by the spiritual energy of heaven and earth, and merged by the spiritual energy of heaven and earth, Li Hao was extremely concerned, because this was related to the connection between himself and the creatures of Hong Huang Star. Li Hao moved his legs, and moved towards the position of the sea python. As Li Hao moved, everything around him seemed to be imposed with time stillness, and all stopped moving. The once active spiritual energy of heaven and earth dispersed around like worshipping the king. Except for the spiritual energy of heaven and earth gathered by Li Hao's condensed body, all other spiritual energy of heaven and earth stopped being active. At this moment, around Li Hao, it was a forbidden magic field, and any extraordinary power could not be exerted. As Li Hao approached the sea python, the consciousness of the sea python was forcibly dragged into sleep by the spiritual energy of heaven and earth in its body, so as to prevent the sea python from interfering with Li Hao's exploration. Walking in front of the huge sea python, the comparison between Li Hao and the sea python at this time was like that between an ant and a behemoth. The gap was so huge. Li Hao put his right hand on the head of the sea python, and then activated the resonance measure of the inner elixir in his body and the sea python. The spiritual energy of heaven and earth is a derivative of the God particle. Naturally, Li Hao's soul particles are also in the spiritual energy of heaven and earth. As the spiritual energy of heaven and earth merged with the soul particles of the sea python, Li Hao's soul particles also lurked into the soul of the sea python. As Li Hao's resonance measures were activated, the soul particles in the sea python responded to Li Hao's call. In a moment, Li Hao's will body that descended on the prehistoric star entered the soul of the sea python without any hindrance. Moreover, with an overwhelming advantage, he strongly occupied the soul of the sea python and let his consciousness dominate the body of the sea python. The sea python, that fell into a deep sleep, then moved its huge body again, but this time the main consciousness that controlled the movement of the sea python became Li Hao. The plan to merge my soul particles with the spiritual energy of heaven and earth into the souls of all living beings is very successful. As long as this program continues, when the evolution of the entire prehistoric star reaches its most intense time, my soul particles will exist in the souls of all living beings on the entire prehistoric star. As long as all living beings are immortal, I will not die. In other words, I'm all living beings. In the deep sea area, Li Hao controlled the huge body of the sea python to hunt in the ocean. Chapter 16 Architecture. In the vast deep sea, Li Hao controlled the huge body of the sea python, active in various sea areas of the ocean, causing endless killing. Scarlet blood flowed and spread in the ocean, shocking countless weak marine creatures, while attracting more marine carnivores. The fangs and sharp teeth of the sea python crushed the bones of the prey, and tore the body of the prey. These marine creatures hunted by themselves were placed in the ocean, to attract more prey to appear. In order to quickly complete his own verification, Li Hao personally created this killing, shocking the weak with blood, and attracting the strong. Finally, through the blood and flesh of the strong, the body of the sea python evolved rapidly, thus reaching a higher level. In this way, Li Hao's soul particles can go deeper into the soul of the sea python, and they can never be separated forever. In Li Hao's conception, the steps for the spiritual energy of heaven and earth to merge into the souls of all living beings are divided into 3 steps: energy core, Yuan Shnama, and Mahayana divine body. Among them, the energy core is the inner elixir condensed by the sea python with the help of the spiritual energy of heaven and earth. The main process of this step is that the spiritual energy of heaven and earth enters the body of life through the breath of life, promoting the rapid evolution of life in its body, so that the meager soul particles of life are revealed. After the soul particles are revealed, the spiritual energy of heaven and earth actively merges with the soul particles to form the inner elixir and cast the energy core, allowing Liheo's soul particles to lurk in the soul of life, thereby giving life the authority to mobilize the spiritual energy of heaven and earth and control extraordinary power. This process is a program that allows the body to continuously evolve and leap so that the soul particles can be revealed quickly. Basically, as long as you absorb the historical process that has a significant impact on yourself, you can quickly enter the level of casting the energy core. And this standard that has a significant impact on yourself is different for everyone. For wild beasts, several experiences of wandering on the edge of life and death are enough to complete the program of revealing soul particles. For intelligent races, you can absorb these valuable historical experiences by constantly reading the historical experiences of your ancestors, so that your soul particles increase. Of course, because these experiences are not personally experienced, they do not affect you much. Then you need to practice it yourself to understand the experience of your ancestors. Simply put, the way to reveal your soul particles and forge the energy core is to integrate knowledge and action. Only by integrating knowledge and action can you have a significant impact on yourself, so that your soul particles can increase and reveal. And when the energy core is completely formed, the next step is to practice the Yuan Shinama. Yuan Shinama is a transitional class that Liheo envisioned in order to make the casting of the Mahayana body smoother and make his soul particles more inseparable from all living beings. Yuan Shinama, as the name suggests, Yuan Shin is a set of defensive equipment for the soul, but once this set of defensive equipment is put on, it can no longer be separated from the soul. Compared with the shortcut method of casting the energy core, the formation of Yuan Shinama can only rely on water grinding skills. The normal thinking and various physiological activities of life are based on the physical body. Once the structure of the physical body is destroyed, even if the life has more source power and a longer lifespan, it will enter death. This is the so-called unnatural death phenomenon. Source power has a certain ability to maintain the body structure from being destroyed, thereby extending the natural lifespan, but source power cannot guarantee the ability to allow life to think freely under the premise that the material body structure is destroyed. In the final analysis, source power is just a special substance that prolongs the natural lifespan, not a divine object of heaven and earth that can bring back to life. All physiological characteristics of life exist based on the material body. The role of the Yuan Shinarmament is to create a more efficient body and load the soul from the body, composed of dead material particles into the body, constructed by active particles such as the spiritual energy of heaven and earth, thereby liberating the soul dragged down by the material body, allowing the soul to grow rapidly in a more efficient body. If the historical process speed absorbed by the soul particles supported by the body composed of dead material particles is 1, then the historical process speed absorbed by the soul particles supported by the body composed of efficient spiritual energy is 100. Simply put, the material body is a radio station that receives signals slowly, and the Yuan Shin is an electronic computer that receives signals quickly. The gap between the two in receiving information is terrifying. Under such an efficient soul growth rate, the Yuan Shin will soon surpass all the material particles of the existing physical body, and then escape from the physical body. At this time, the Yuan Shin, which is far more powerful than the physical body, will begin to cast the Mahayana body. This stage is also Liheo's harvest stage. The formation of the Yuan Shinama means that Liheo's soul particles are completely inseparable from all living beings. Once all living beings try to strip Liheo's soul particles, it means that all living beings have chosen death. After the Yuan Shinama is formed, it means that Liheo controls the power of life and death over all living beings. Liheo controls the God particles. The God particles control the spiritual energy of heaven and earth, and the spiritual energy of heaven and earth controls the living beings of Han Huang Star. Under the layers of classes, the living beings at the bottom are simply powerless to resist Liheo's rule. This is not the dynasty rule of mortals. The Emperor's power foundation comes from the people at the bottom. In Lee Hao's case, the power of all living beings comes from the spiritual energy of heaven and earth, and the spiritual energy of heaven and earth comes from the God particles, and the God particles come from Lee Hao. Under the premise that Lee Hao controls the grassroots productivity and military violence, what can all living beings use to resist? After completing the formation of the Yuanshan armament, the life with the Yuanshan will enter a stage of rapid development of strength. It will be very easy to overturn the rivers and seas, call the wind and rain, and split the earth. As long as your Yuanshan is strong enough, the more spiritual energy of heaven and earth can be mobilized, and the stronger the power will be. Of course, the guy who fights purely with Yuanshan is a stupid life. There are good material particles that are not used, and you use your own foundation to fight. That is to live to long. The casting of the Mahayana body is a lever, with the Yuanshan as the core. By mobilizing the spiritual energy that permeates between heaven and earth, using the spiritual energy as a lever, it can pry more material particles, so that these material particles can be compressed, and then cast a powerful Mahayana body. Wrap it around the periphery of the Yuanshan to provide a strong defense for the Yuanshan. No mistakes. One song, one post, one content, 1619, one book, one bar, one look. In this way, the energy level of carbon-based life has reached a level that is enough to cross the void of the universe and deliver express to Lee Hao. When the strong interference area of the Yuanxi star reaches Hang Huang star, Lee Hao will be able to command the soul particles hidden in the Yuanshan of the Mahayana masters, so that these Mahayana masters will automatically have the idea of ascending, so as to ensure that his journey will not be without any gains. Of course, Lee Hao's idea is perfect, but it needs to be verified. As for now, Lee Hao still has to hunt marine life honestly, so as to promote the advancement of the sea python to the Yuanshan. Chapter 17. The soul takes shape. Deep sea, bloody water flows in endless darkness. Broken limbs drift quietly in the sea water. The flesh and scales of the sea creatures are torn by sharp teeth like daggers, and the boundless shadow of death shrouds every corner of the sea. A huge creature like a killer whale is swimming quickly in the ocean. The killer whale that once ravaged the ocean is now like a stray dog, frantically shuttling to other seas. The heavy seawater is forcibly crashed by the killer whale's streamlined body, causing the seawater in the ocean to vibrate around in waves, and setting off endless waves on the sea surface. After the killer whale has the help of the spiritual energy of heaven and earth, it has long been separated from its original physical fitness, and has quickly jumped from a length of less than 10 meters to a behemoth of tens of meters in length. However, the more powerful killer whale did not leave its hunting area like the sea snake in the past to explore unknown seas. The killer whale, which has become even bigger, is still dominating in its hunting area, enjoying a wonderful life of eating and sleeping, and eating. When the lazy killer whale met the traveler sea python, an overwhelming contest chased the killer whale to flee everywhere. At this time, the sea python, under the control of Lee Hao, is almost an invincible existence that ravages the entire ocean. In the waters of Han Huang Star, Lee Hao frantically set off a bloody killing, using the body of a sea python to hunt all kinds of marine life in the ocean. The genes of these marine creatures are blended with the genes of the sea python, so that with the help of the spiritual energy of heaven and earth, the life essence of the sea python can quickly leap and evolve. And this experience of conquering the ocean was also transmitted to the sleeping consciousness of the sea python by Lee Hao. When Lee Hao helps the sea python complete the accumulation of historical processes, and allows the sea python to breed the soul and complete the loading of the soul weapon, it is time for Lee Hao to verify his system structure. When Lee Hao controlled the sea python to chase the fleeing killer whale in front, the spiritual energy of heaven and earth in the ocean was constantly gathering into the body of the sea python as the sea python swam. The two fundamental rules of the spiritual energy of heaven and earth, the first is to find the soul particles of life and then merge with them. And the second rule is to favor those lives that do not abide by the rules. In this chase, both the sea python and the killer whale are creatures that destroy the original food chain rules of the ocean, so the spiritual energy of heaven and earth in the ocean is gathering towards the sea python and the killer whale, enhancing their two rights to mobilize the spiritual energy of heaven and earth. However, in this chase, the sea python has the initiative, and because of Lee Hao's bonus, the sea python's advantage in facing the killer whale is overwhelming. for the same disaster. Actively facing the disaster must be more prepared than passively facing the disaster. The favor of the spiritual energy of heaven and earth of the killer whale is passively stimulated, and it is completely unprepared, so the killer whale cannot exert its strongest combat power at all. Under this comparison of strength and weakness, as long as the sea python catches the escaped killer whale, the victory or defeat is determined. At this time, the killer whale that was fleeing in a hurry was rushing towards the land in a panic. The pressure of the sea python's death almost made the killer whale have no time to think. In the killer whale's consciousness, there was no response plan to face this dangerous situation. If the killer whale can survive this time, then the killer whale's response plan will be passed on to his descendants. Let his descendants face this situation, not like the killer whale, who has no choice and can only rely on luck to barely find a glimmer of hope. But unfortunately, the killer whale's luck did not come. Under the death pursuit of the sea python, the killer whale rushed to the beach. A large amount of seawater was brought to the coast by the impact of the killer whale, completely soaking the dry beach. When marine life rushed to the land, there was only one end, that is, being sunburned to death by the sun. If the killer whale is now a great success of the Yuan Shen, then the killer whale can use the power of the Yuan Shen to attract the seawater in the ocean, set off a sweet rain on the land, and free itself from the threat of the sun. But unfortunately, the killer whale's soul weapon was not loaded at this time, and even the energy core was not condensed. Every race has its own limit value, and this race limit value is more abnormal for the stronger species. Just like the killer whale, which has reached a huge level before the spiritual energy of heaven and earth, its race limit value far exceeds the race limit value of the sea snake. And the way to condense the energy core is to let the creature constantly strengthen its body with the help of spiritual energy, and then approach the race limit value. In this process of becoming stronger, the spiritual energy of heaven and earth will penetrate into all aspects of life, and finally find the thin soul particles among the astronomical material particles, and then merge with them to form an energy core. It is conceivable that it is a torment for the spiritual energy to find soul particles in the body of a behemoth like the killer whale. The killer whale was stranded on the beach, completely losing the power to resist. The fear of death made the killer whale shake its huge body constantly, but this was just a futile effort. After a while, the sea python that was chasing the killer whale relentlessly slowly swam out of the ocean, its sharp teeth flashing with deep coldness under the sunlight. The cold snake pupil stared at the dying killer whale, its scarlet tongue trembled slightly in the air, and then a bloody mouth that covered the sky and the sun blocked the killer whale's sight. It swallowed the killer whale into its stomach in one gulp, just like a chameleon's tongue preying on insects. After the sea python swallowed the killer whale into its stomach, it retreated back into the ocean like lightning. The cold sea water covered the body of the sea python again, and the body of the sea python quickly lurked in the deep sea. And just as the sea python had just retreated from the land, a loud cry resounded throughout the sky, and a huge golden rock with a wingspan of 50 meters soared in the sky, and the golden wings were like the weapons of a god under the sun. The huge golden eagle's sharp eagle eyes looked at the sea python retreating back into the ocean tens of thousands of meters away from him, and a trace of human pity flashed in his eyes. In the deep sea, after Li Hao controlled the sea python to devour the killer whale, the sea python's historical accumulation of evolving Yuanshan was enough. Then, Li Hao did not delay at all, and directly let the sea python start the process of evolution. Li Hao's soul particles are hidden in the soul of the sea python, so theoretically, Li Hao is the second personality of the sea python. When the sea python was sleeping, Li Hao controlled the sea python's Yuanshan armed loading. A large amount of historical information about the sea python fighting in the ocean was constantly transmitted to the sea python's soul. Although this historical information was blocked by the material body, it did not touch the sea python's soul very strongly, and thus could not make the sea python's soul particles grow rapidly. But the sea python couldn't stand the control of Li Hao, and it had experienced too many fights. It had survived countless near-death experiences, and struggled to death countless times. These histories of constantly wandering on the edge of death touched the sea python's soul again and again, causing the sea python's soul particles to increase continuously. It strengthened the sea python's soul strength. In the process of the rapid increase of the sea python's soul particles, the spiritual energy of heaven and earth wrapped around the edge of the sea python's soul, like a thirsty virgin, quickly merged with each soul particle. In this process of growth, the layer of spiritual energy of heaven and earth wrapped outside the sea python's soul was becoming increasingly thinner, and in the energy core, a small sea python was constantly taking shape. As the small sea python continued to grow, like a dragon egg breaking its shell, the sea python's soul jumped out of the spiritual energy of heaven and earth. Then, another clearer world appeared in front of the sea python. There was a lot of spiritual energy of heaven and earth active everywhere between heaven and earth. These spiritual energy of heaven and earth gathered around life like elves, constantly pouring into the body of life, allowing the body of life to continue to grow. The signals from heaven and earth and the information from the ocean kept transmitting to the sea python's soul, strengthening the sea python's soul particles, and making the sea python's soul stronger. In the outside world, as the sea python's soul took shape, the sea python's body evolution was also completed. A sharp horn emerged from the sea python's forehead, and two sharp claws protruded from the sea python's abdomen. At this time, the sea python was more like a dragon than a python. At this time, Lihao temporarily blocked his perception of the world, and then chose the sea dragon's perception of the world. With the help of the sea dragon's soul, Lihao almost didn't need to think too much, and he clearly knew what happened in the sea area, where he was not long ago. No mistakes, one song, one post, one content, 1619, one book, one bar, one look. Under the unknown threat, a large number of fish fled and ran towards the sea in all directions. The ability of the Yuanshan, the sensitivity to information contact. As long as the Yuanshan contacts a certain substance, it can observe the residual information of the substance itself, and then observe what happened to the substance itself not long ago. This ability is the physical structure formed by Lihao, in order to speed up the speed of information reception of life, and then let the soul particles grow rapidly. Now it seems that the result of this verification is very successful. Not long after, Lihao withdrew from the body of the sea dragon, and returned to the Yuanshi star. After the sea dragon woke up, everything that Lihao experienced, by controlling the body of the sea dragon would make the sea dragon think that this was what he had experienced. And this is the terrible thing about the Yuanshan. While giving life an extremely fast speed of information reception and the right to control the spiritual energy of heaven and earth, it also delivered all the thoughts in the soul of life to Lihao's hands. Chapter 18 Turtle Brothers. At midnight, the light of the stars is blocked by the darkness, and only a little starlight is reflected on the sea surface, thus providing the only light for the world. There are no satellites attached to the Huang star, so naturally there is no moon. During the day, the light of the stars will illuminate everything on the Huang star, providing the power of life for the Huang star. At night, only other galaxies and stars from the depths of the universe can cross the boundless cosmic distance to bring a little starlight to the Huang star. Under the cover of the night, as the waves wash the dry beach again and again, at the junction of the beach and the ocean, a large number of turtles crawl out of the ocean and come to the beach to reproduce the next generation of the turtle race and lay eggs. With the help of the cover of the night, these huge turtles with a body size of up to 1 meter and carrying tortoise shells slowly crawl out of the ocean towards the spawning ground. At this time, 10 years have passed since the advent of the spiritual energy of heaven and earth. The impact of the spiritual energy of heaven and earth on this world has gradually emerged. The first is that the native creatures of the Huang star have begun to grow huge at the same time. The buds of wisdom began to sprout among the life groups of Huang star, just like these turtles. In the past, every time the stupid turtles laid eggs, they would be detected in advance by their natural enemies, the predators flying in the sky, so that the turtles' egg-laying period would become the predators' hunting period. After the spiritual energy of heaven and earth descended, after being nourished by the spiritual energy of heaven and earth, these turtles played a trick in order to avoid being disturbed by predators. They advanced their egg-laying date by 1 month and climbed onto the coast under the cover of night. The weak will always be forced by the strong to use some tricks to seek their own survival probability. And most of the strong will abide by certain rules, because if they can get the greatest benefits by abiding by the rules, why break the rules? Isn't that a thankless task? For those predators flying in the sky, going to the beach at a fixed time will yield a rich meal, so why go ahead and do something thankless? It is this mentality of the sky predator that provides the sea turtles with a chance of success. Under the cover of night, this large-scale turtle egg-laying activity was a huge success, and no turtle died because of the attack of the sky predator. This practice of the sea turtle group destroyed the old flood season rules, and this restless behavior brought the favor of the spiritual energy of heaven and earth. Part of the spiritual energy of heaven and earth began to gather among the sea turtles returning to the ocean, and these spiritual energies of heaven and earth began to accelerate the evolution of the sea turtle group. And another part of the spiritual energy of heaven and earth descended on the heads of the sea turtle eggs, allowing the next generation of sea turtles to be born with wisdom faster. Now the favor of the spiritual energy of heaven and earth has arrived, and the next step, the disaster from the rules of nature, will come as scheduled with the favor of the spiritual energy of heaven and earth. The time for sea turtles to lay eggs is a link in the natural food chain and a part of the survival of the fittest. Laying eggs at a fixed time can not only get better light, but also make the sea turtle eggs have a great probability of giving birth to healthy baby turtles. It is also possible to reduce the population of sea turtles through the hunting of sky predators, so as to prevent a large number of sea turtles from returning to the deep sea, causing food shortages and eventually causing the extinction of the entire population. Now, this practice of the sea turtle population has destroyed the old natural rules. Although it has been favored by the spiritual energy of heaven and earth, the punishment from the natural rules will be a disaster for the sea turtle population. For the group of adult sea turtles returning to the ocean, the shortage of food in the ocean will be a catastrophe of life and death for them. If they can survive, there will be great benefits. If they can't survive, the entire population will be reduced to a lower level in the food chain, or even more seriously, the extinction of the entire population. And for those unborn baby turtles, the anger from the sky predators will make the sea turtle population pay a heavy price. Under the premise that the strong abide by the rules, the weak abide by the rules, because the rules are made for the strong. Under the premise that both parties abide by the rules, the strong will naturally get more. Now, when their food does not follow the rules, they will use bloody punishment to warn any creature that dares to break the rules of the price they will face. Although the sky predators have no concept of rules in their minds, it does not prevent them from instinctively maintaining the operation of the rules. The adult turtles escaped back to the ocean, and the members that the adult turtles have to sacrifice will be plundered from the little turtles even more. As time passed, the original egg-laying period was getting closer and closer. From time to time, some huge birds began to appear in the sky. These huge birds spread their broad wings and soared in the sky, waiting for their feast to arrive. Under the beach, with the gathering and nourishment of a large amount of heaven and earth spiritual energy, the little turtles buried under the beach began to hatch slowly. This time was a little long. While their parents became stronger, they also passively inherited some of the power in their blood into the bodies of these little turtles, causing the turtle eggshells to be slightly hard. In the pit covered by sand, the sound of clacking kept ringing. The little turtles were struggling to get out of the eggshells. Their curiosity about the new world supported them to hit their eggshells day and night so that they could see the beauty of the new world as soon as possible. With the sound of the eggshell breaking, a healthy little turtle ran out of the eggshell excitedly and replenished the energy consumed when struggling out of the eggshell by eating its own eggshell. Just when the little turtle wanted to rush out of the sand above its head and go to the new world, a childish call attracted the attention of the little turtle. "Brother who has been born, please help me. I can't get out. This eggshell is too hard. Can the brother outside help me?" In the perception of the first little turtle that broke out of the shell, a baby voice was talking to him. Hearing this voice, the first little turtle who was born did not rush to the new world outside in a hurry, but chose to help this brother he had never met. While the little turtle was helping his brother to hit the eggshell, the other little turtles had already broken out of the eggshells and replenished their energy. Driven by curiosity and the instinctive desire for the sea, the other little turtles hurriedly drilled out of the sand and headed for the new world. Only this firstborn little turtle was still constantly helping his brother, whom he had never met, to hit the eggshell. Soon, in the entire Eglang cave, only this persistent little turtle and the little turtle that still couldn't break out of the shell were left. Kakaka. The sound of hitting the eggshells continued to ring in the silent pit. The persistent little turtle helped his brother break out of the shell at the cost of a lot of physical energy consumption. No mistakes in one poem, one post, one content, one book, one bar, 1619, one book, one bar, one look. Finally, with the efforts of the two little turtles, the eggshell as hard as a rock finally broke, and a skinny little turtle crawled out of the eggshell. While eating its own eggshell, to replenish its consumed energy, it said to its brother in front of it in a baby voice, "Thank you, brother. You are so kind." For some reason, the praise from the skinny little turtle made the heart of the first little turtle that broke out of the shell full of satisfaction, even though this little turtle had already consumed a lot of energy in the process of hitting the eggshell. Chapter 19 Natural Rules. While the little turtle and the big turtle were showing one of the few brotherhoods in the animal world in the cave, in the outside world, cruel natural elimination came to the next generation of the entire turtle group. Because of the opportunistic adult turtles. This led to a natural punishment that was a disaster for the turtle group. The rules of nature are extensive and strict. They exist in every aspect of life, dominate life from birth to death, and control all changes in nature. The mysterious butterfly effect on the earth is a manifestation of part of the rules of nature. On the sunny beach, countless huge sky birds soared in the sky, their eyes staring at the direction of the sea. Long-term experience tells them that at this time of year, a lot of food will emerge from the bottom of the sea to enrich their stomachs. However, as more and more birds accumulate on the edge of the beach, the turtles that used to lay eggs on time have no signs of appearing. There is no trace of life on the edge of the beach, where the waves are rolling. Not to mention the huge number of sea turtles, even the crabs and shrimps that used to be there all year round were gone. It seemed that in a short period of time, this beach had become extinct. This abnormal scene caused a commotion among the birds in the sky. Whether it was the experience transmitted by their parents or their own experience, they told these birds flying in the sky that abnormal things were demons. Unfortunately, however, these giant birds in the sky were temporarily unintelligent. They knew that something was wrong, but they could not find a way to solve the problem. You know, for this hunting, these birds came here from the other side thousands of miles away, just for a good meal, based on the experience they had summarized in the past. Every time they arrived on time, they would be rewarded by God, but they never thought about what they would do when this feast disappeared one day. The dense bird calls rang throughout the sky, like the chirping of countless crows, which made people feel irritated. Just when countless birds were at a loss for what to do in the unknown situation, a majestic cry sounded in the higher sky, and an extremely huge golden rock swooped down from the sky, and the wind and waves it brought blew countless flocks of birds away from their original places. The sky is the first place where the God particles come into contact, so there is a lot of spiritual energy in the sky area. These spiritual energy of heaven and earth allow the birds in the sky to naturally occupy the advantage of this evolution. As the king among the tribes at the top of the sky food chain, King Jinpeng is tantamount to the uncrowned king of the entire sky bird. With the appearance of King Jinpeng's tribe, the golden winged dapping bird tribe, also lined up neatly behind King Jinpeng like a guard of honor. Countless wind tornadoes accompanied the wings of the golden winged dapping bird tribe, stirring up bursts of rain clouds in the sky. In an instant, the sky of the entire beach darkened, and the rumbling sound of thunder sounded in every corner of the sky. From the ground, if you ignore the flocks of birds gathered in the sky, this weather is undoubtedly a sign of a storm. For the little turtles that broke out of their shells under the beach, what could be more pleasant than returning to the ocean in the wind and rain? However, when the little turtles excitedly popped their heads out of the cave, ready to move towards the sea under the wind and rain, the flocks of birds soaring in the sky were like hungry wolves, staring at the food that had just popped out of their heads. For wild beasts, if there is anything more important than the food in front of them, it is when the food that was originally thought to be lost appears in front of them again. Immediately, the flock of birds waving like canvas quickly descended from the sky to the beach at the speed of falling meteors, and their sharp beaks penetrated the thin shells of the little turtles, swallowing the little turtles' bodies into their stomachs. Compared with the flocks of birds in the sky that first came into contact with the spiritual energy of heaven and earth, the creatures in the ocean and land are not just a little bit weak. Although the sky birds have not been able to produce a strong man in the Yuanshan realm for various reasons, there are many strong men with energy cores. In the food chain of nature, the birds in the sky naturally occupy the middle and upper levels of the food chain. It can even be said that the sky birds are the biggest beneficiaries of the food chain of nature. On the cloudy beach, an extinction level killing unfolded under the sharp beaks of the sky birds. For the sky birds, the abnormal situation this time has made them feel a little wrong. Although they can't know what's wrong, it doesn't prevent them from enjoying the food to their heart's content. And compared to the past when there were adult turtles filling the stomachs of these birds, because of the existence of large turtles, the sky birds didn't pay much attention to the small turtles. So every time they hunted, some of the small turtles would escape into the sea, thus continuing the number of turtles. But this time, without the existence of large turtles, the sky bird's attention was all focused on the small turtles. This result led to the small turtles on the beach facing the end of annihilation. The punishment of natural rules is always so harsh. When all things in nature abide by the rules, every group has some rights to reproduce, and this right will be protected by nature. When there are some groups in all things in nature that do not abide by the rules, the terrible power of natural rules will be like the ocean, crushing layer by layer, until the rebels are completely crushed. This harsh natural rule exists in all aspects of the world, between hunters and hunted. Like lions and antelopes, lions will eat those weak antelope cubs or immobile old antelopes to allow the antelopes to survive more healthily. Once the antelopes choose to violate this rule, such as protecting weak cubs or protecting old antelopes, the antelopes will die because of the tragic death of the mature antelopes, which will lead to the destruction of the entire antelope herd. Similarly, lions are also passively abiding by this rule. In the prehistoric star, those who abide by the rules of nature are protected by the rules of nature, but they lose the favor of the spiritual energy of heaven and earth. Those who break the rules of nature will be blessed by the spiritual energy of heaven and earth, but they will lose the protection of the rules of nature. Whether they break or obey, they will face the test of the rules. The winner will live, and the loser will die. Under such a contest, the soul particles in the prehistoric star will grow rapidly, and eventually, from the huge base, everything Lihao needs will be derived. Chapter 20, Death at Sea. A feast of gluttony was presented on the beach. Countless big birds were hunting for turtles crawling out of the caves on the beach. They swallowed these little turtles into their stomachs, to fill their stomachs and comfort themselves for the fears they had these days. As for the mood of these little turtles being eaten, I don't think any predator would care about the mood of the food. The boundless blood red dyed the yellow sand on the beach red, and a blood red ocean was formed by the blood of turtles. The screams of turtles before death and the joyful sounds of birds before eating complemented each other, forming an epic tragedy of turtles and a harvest carnival of birds. In the eyes of the creator of this killing, he was just enjoying a sumptuous meal, and everything he did was just to stay alive. Under the cave, the turtle brothers slowly poked out two little heads from the bottom of the beach and carefully observed the situation outside. The screams of the same kind before death were transmitted to the brains of the turtle brothers through some unknown means, which made the turtle brothers' cognition of the outside world change to a certain extent. The little turtle brother looked at the scene of his kind being killed outside, and asked his brother with a sobbing voice, "Brother, what happened? Why are our brothers being killed? Did we do something wrong?" Faced with the question of the little turtle brother, the big turtle brother could not answer. The lack of knowledge and the lack of cognition of the world were all bothering the way the big turtle brother answered his brother's question. The big turtle brother could not answer his brother's question, so in the end he could only answer stiffly, "Because we are too weak." Suddenly, only the sobbing of the little brother was left in the whole cave. After a while, as more and more turtles were devoured by the flock of birds, the blood and flesh of a large number of turtles gradually filled the stomachs of the birds, and birds continued to rise from the ground. Soaring up to the sky, the proud sky race disdained to dance with the ground race. A large number of birds flew away from the ground, and the danger level on the ground was constantly decreasing. When the flock of birds completely left the ground, on the beach, it was already blood red everywhere. Almost none of the little turtles born in this batch survived. The hope of future reproduction of turtles has been completely cut off. In the cave, the turtle brothers quietly waited for the birds in the sky to leave, wanting to wait until the danger completely disappeared. However, the idea is good, but in reality this condition is not true. The reason why the little turtles rushed to the sea as soon as they were born, in addition to their curiosity about the new world, there are also physical reasons. Turtles are not land tortoises. They cannot survive on land for too long. They need the nourishment of the ocean to survive for a long time. And now, with the continuous passage of time, the water in the bodies of the turtle brothers is getting less and less, and the ecological environment on land is gradually rejecting the existence of the turtle brothers. At this time, the body surface of the turtle brothers has gradually dried up. Although there is sand blocking the sunlight, the scorching sun has been evaporating the moisture on the beach, depriving the turtle brothers of their lifespan. However, at such a dangerous moment, the turtle brothers did not dare to move towards the sea at all. Obviously, the hope of extending their lives is in front of them, but the turtle brothers did not dare to chase it at all. Because in the sky, those sky birds, which are equivalent to cruel executioners for the turtle brothers, are still wandering in the sky, looking for something. In fact, the reason why the sky birds are still unwilling to leave this beach is only because their king, the king of the golden winged Dapan clan, King Jinpeng, did not leave the place. Therefore, other sky birds dare not leave the place without authorization, so as not to cause King Jinpeng's dissatisfaction and eventually cause themselves to be killed. As the existence at the top of the food chain, King Jinpeng almost naturally has the right to rule over the sky birds after the spiritual energy of heaven and earth descends. This is the authority given by the rules of nature, the absolute dominance of the strong over the weak. Where the food chain exists, King Jinpeng is undoubtedly the king of the sky. In the cave, as time passed quickly, the hottest time of the day finally arrived. Even though the golden winged Dapan clan flapped their wings to form a huge dark cloud gathering area, the golden winged Dapan clan was not a perpetual motion machine. So after the golden winged Dapan clan took a temporary rest, the sun's rays once again shone through the cover of the clouds and shone on the beach, evaporating the few moisture on the beach. Under this situation, where death was approaching step by step, the turtle brothers finally couldn't stand this feeling of waiting to die. Under the beach, in the cave, that was gradually drying up, the elder turtle brother said to the younger turtle brother seriously, "Wait for me to count 1, 2, 3, and we will run out together. Remember, don't look back, run as fast as you can. Remember, don't look back." After saying this, the whole cave was silent. Under the heavy sense of depression, the elder turtle brother's voice was like a dull bell, constantly ringing in the cave. 1, 2, run. A sharp roar sounded in the younger turtle brother's mind. Immediately, 2 small turtles moved their short legs and ran towards the sea. At the moment when the 2 turtles appeared, King Jinpeng, who had been hovering in the sky, stared at the direction of the turtle brothers with sharp eyes, and a sharp cry sounded in the sky. At the moment he saw the turtle brothers, King Jinpeng understood that what he was looking for finally appeared. That is the existence of wisdom. As rule rebels born by violating the rules, the turtle brothers were almost born to be favored by the spiritual energy of heaven and earth. Originally, this favored power was distributed to the entire group of small turtles, but with the death of a large number of small turtles, this power did not disappear, but was indirectly transferred to the 2 small turtles. In addition, the 2 small turtles were variants of the entire group of small turtles, born with shallow wisdom. The combination of the 2 gave birth to the natural treasure that King Jinpeng was looking for, a natural treasure that could catalyze the rapid birth of wisdom and thus achieve the realm of Yuanshan. In the sky, countless storms accelerated the speed of King Jinpeng as he dived. However, in the blink of an eye, King Jinpeng flew directly to the beach and then dived into the turtle brother who was constantly crawling towards the sea on the beach. King Jinpeng's falcon was like a sharp dagger. Once it pierced the turtle's body, it would be a penetrating injury. At that time, the turtle brother would have only one fate, that is, death. Facing King Jinpeng who was attacking him, the turtle brother who was running hard was like being scared silly. He stopped crawling and stood there stupidly, without any movement. The storm that King Jinpeng swooped down carried a strong wind pressure, which suppressed the turtle brother, so that he could not move, and could only stay there and wait for death. Run, what are you still doing there? A voice that only the turtle brother could hear sounded in the turtle brother's mind, and the voice was full of anger and anxiety. I want to run, but I can't move. An anxious voice sounded in the mind of the turtle brother, full of self-blame and fear. Just as the falcon of King Jinpeng was getting closer and closer, the turtle brother made an unexpected move. No mistakes, one sentence, one content, 1619, one book, one bar. The turtle brother quickly ran towards the turtle brother, carrying the impact of speed, and the turtle brother slammed into the turtle brother. Survive. With the impact of the turtle brother rolled quickly towards the direction of the ocean like a snowball, and rushed directly into the sea. The last meeting between the turtle brother and the turtle brother was the moment when the turtle brother was completely penetrated by the falcon of King Jinpeng. Scarlet blood slowly flowed out of the turtle brother's tortoise shell, and only the pair of lifeless eyes were still staring at the direction of the turtle brother. No. Chapter 21 First Acquaintance. Suddenly awakened from his sleep, terrible memories once again filled the mind of the turtle brother. The suffocating feeling of powerlessness echoed in the heart of the turtle brother. Become stronger, keep getting stronger, and become stronger at all costs. The angry roar roared in the heart of the turtle brother. The turtle brother's limbs were like oars, stirring the seawater in the ocean, and swimming quickly towards the deep sea area. In the deep sea, the sea dragon, as a higher creature that has already given birth to the soul and has its own simple wisdom, is wandering around boringly, looking for the second creature with wisdom, a beast that can communicate with itself, and not a beast that can only run away and kill when it sees itself. The huge body of the sea dragon is like a golden hoop that stirs the turbulence of the ocean, constantly stirring the ocean currents around the sea dragon, thereby artificially creating all kinds of deadly whirlpools. Under the influence of the sea dragon, the water flow that was born constantly generated a huge attraction to the surrounding seawater. This attraction sucked the deep sea fish around the ocean into the vortex, and bound the deep sea fish in the vortex, so that they could not escape. The huge body of the sea dragon kept circling around the vortex, and the voices of the Yuanshan sounded in the minds of the deep sea fish in the vortex. Is there any creature that can speak? Speak. I'm so bored. The sea dragon used the power of the Yuanshan to constantly search for traces of wisdom in the vortexes, but in the end, the sea dragon harvested disappointment again and again. The result of the sea dragon's disappointment was that it opened its bloody mouth and swallowed the entire vortex in one gulp, swallowing the bound fish in the vortex into its stomach, becoming the energy source for its own activities and a sample of genetic evolution. Since it can't communicate, then it will become a part of its own body. This is the simple thinking mode of the sea dragon. Wisdom needs communication to grow continuously. Although the sea dragon has the most precious wisdom in this era, without a second source of wisdom to communicate with it, the wisdom of the sea dragon cannot grow. Therefore, the wisdom of the sea dragon is only that of a 3-year-old child. When it reaches the realm of Yuanshan, although the sea dragon has a Yuanshan body that is easier to accept external information than the physical body, thus constantly promoting the increase of soul particles. No matter how powerful the signal receiver is, it can't stand the fact that there is no signal in this world. After completing the search of a sea area, the sea dragon went to the next sea area and continued to look for traces of wisdom. After a long time, the sea dragon floated quietly in the ocean, allowing the surrounding sea water to push itself in an unknown direction. Loneliness is like the darkness that constantly devours light, gradually wiping out the few wisdoms of the sea dragon, until the sea dragon meets the turtle brother. In the deep sea vortex as deep as a black hole, countless marine creatures are dragged into the deep sea vortex like the light source swallowed by the black hole. All creatures cannot escape the bondage of the deep sea vortex, and at the edge of this deadly deep sea vortex, the turtle brother is unlucky enough to be dragged into the deep sea vortex, and life and death are involuntarily. The oppression of death is gradually approaching. The turtle brother only feels that his heart is beating wildly, his thoughts are constantly reversed, and everything is moving away from him. This state of confusion continued until a voice sounded. Is there a creature that can speak? Speak. I'm so bored. The lazy and slightly decadent voice sounded in the turtle brother's mind. This voice was like a ray of light in the darkness, illuminating everything about the turtle brother. Yes, I can speak. From the initial difficult humming to the final roar, the turtle brother used all his strength and finally roared out his words. In the outside world, the sea dragon looked at the deep sea vortex in front of him, boringly repeating his unchanged words, waiting for the passage of time, and then swallowing the vortex in front of him, and continuing his next journey. Just as the sea dragon mechanically repeated the action of swallowing food, a roar finally awakened the consciousness of the sea dragon, that had not communicated for a long time. Is this, got it? The long-term loneliness constantly eroded the wisdom of the sea dragon, just like humans who have not thought for a long time. No matter how smart their IQ is, their brains will rust. The sea dragon stopped thinking, started to move again, like a rusty engine, and began to turn slowly. At this time, half of the time it took for the sea dragon to completely swallow the entire vortex had passed. The long-term mechanical mode made the sea dragon's consciousness and body a little inconsistent, just like a worker who kept working in a factory suddenly saw a stranger, and the thinking that had not communicated for a long time needed a little time to adapt. Fortunately, the sea dragon's consciousness recovered quickly, so there was no major loss. The sea dragon's soul quickly swept through the vortex in front of it, looking for the existence of the turtle brother among the huge number of marine creatures. After a while, the sea dragon pulled the turtle brother out of the deep sea vortex, and then swallowed the vortex in front of it into its stomach again, becoming its own source of activity. The material particles around the sea dragon were compressed rapidly under the action of the ascension. After a while, the sea dragon's body, which was several kilometers long, was directly reduced to the same size as the sea turtle brother. After the reduction, the sea dragon was like a snake, constantly circling around the sea turtle brother, and the excitement was self-evident. "Hey, can you speak?" The sea turtle brother slowly recovered from his drowsy state, and the first time he heard the sea dragon's words, he kept hissing. These hisses were translated by the ascension, and turned into words that the sea dragon could understand. "Don't kill me, don't kill me." The sea dragon asked in confusion, "Who wants to kill you? Tell me, I'll help you kill it." The first time he saw a creature that could communicate with him, the sea dragon directly boasted, "There is no need to ask who the enemy is, nor how powerful the enemy is. This can be said to be a kind of domineering, or it can be said to be a kind of ignorance. But it is this temperament that seems domineering to the sea turtle brother, but it has captured the heart of the sea turtle brother. Really? Can you help me get revenge?" the turtle brother asked anxiously. The hatred for King Jinping made the turtle brother forget to ask who the sea dragon was. "Of course, I keep my word. Tell me who it is. I will help you kill it," the sea dragon said domineeringly. As the sea dragon spoke, the spiritual energy of heaven and earth and the ocean gathered towards the position of the sea dragon like a shark that smelled blood, but only Lee Heo could see this gathering form. If you're listening to this novel on a channel other than Fanfic World, it means they downloaded and uploaded it without effort. We cordially invite you to visit our channel, Mundo Fanfic Novelos. There you'll find the original version of this story and you can explore many other novels of various genres. We're waiting for you to immerse yourself in a world of incredible novels. Chapter 22, Soul Radiation. At the bottom of the abyss-like ocean, the sea dragon carries a small turtle on its back and swims in the deep sea. Around the sea dragon's body, a layer of cyan energy barrier protects the small turtle from the terrible water pressure at the bottom of the sea. Compared with the huge body of the sea dragon, the skinny little turtle is like an ant, so weak. However, such a weak ant is more important than all the lives in the entire ocean in the heart of the sea dragon, because this is the first intelligent life that the sea dragon has encountered in his life experience. This feeling is like first love, leaving a deep mark in the course of the sea dragon's life. In other words, your people and your closest brother were killed by a golden bird in the sky and its men. The sea dragon kept pushing away the sea water in front of him at the bottom of the ocean, passing through the corals on the seabed. While moving forward, he was also learning about the past of the little turtle. The little turtle said excitedly and angrily to the doubts of the sea dragon, "Of course, we didn't do anything. We just saw this world and haven't even left any traces in this world. We are facing this cruel massacre. Therefore, I want revenge. I want to make them pay the price." The sea dragon didn't understand the anger of the little turtle. As the first group of creatures on this planet to become powerful, it couldn't understand this feeling of powerlessness in the face of the powerful. Although there were many life and death battles in the memory of the sea dragon, this was not the real experience of the sea dragon after all. So in the face of the anger and fear of the little turtle, there was actually no fluctuation in the heart of the sea dragon, but the sea dragon had promised the little turtle to avenge it in advance. What was said must be done. This is one of the principles of the sea dragon. You can want revenge, but you are too weak now. You can't even bear the pressure of the deep sea. How can you take revenge? The sea dragon calmly analyzed to the little turtle. Then what should I do? Faced with this fact, that he didn't want to admit, but it made people desperate, the little turtle replied a little decadently. The sea dragon thought for a while, and then said to the little turtle, I have a way to make you stronger faster. But this method will make you lose the hope of becoming stronger. As long as it can make me stronger, I can accept everything. The little turtle roared a little radically. The sea dragon almost didn't think about the little turtle's answer, but frowned slightly, because in its opinion, the little turtle at this time had lost its mind. As the first friend of its life, the sea dragon felt that it should persuade it. If you keep going like this, I think you will never be able to get revenge. Hatred has blinded your eyes. It is gradually devouring your reason. Although the seemingly irrational beast is terrible, in my opinion, this kind of beast is just the last madness of the prey before death. I think you need to calm down now. Give me an answer in 3 days. After that, the sea dragon blocked the connection between itself and the little turtle, and indirectly put the little turtle in solitary confinement. The sea dragon, who has experienced loneliness, knows that appropriate silence can quickly calm down a crazy life. After the sea dragon confined the little turtle, the sea dragon did not stop its wandering pace, but continued to move towards deeper waters. As for the choice of the little turtle 3 days later, the sea dragon had already made a conclusion. The little turtle would still choose to accept the sea dragon's way of becoming stronger, but at that time, compared to the crazy little turtle now, the little turtle had calmed down and would not do irrational things because of crazy hatred. In order to strengthen his own way and not let his only friend die, the sea dragon needed to use some marine life to do an experiment. How to reduce the danger of this experiment within 3 days? Then the only way is to let the powerful marine life use its body to provide data analysis for the sea dragon's experiment. In the long life course of the sea dragon can vaguely feel the impact of his existence on marine life. Wherever he has been, it will always cause some biological mutations, and this mutation exists in every life weaker than himself. In order to verify whether his idea is correct, the sea dragon needs some marine life to make contributions. At the bottom of the extremely deep ocean, there are endless powerful creatures. The fact that these creatures can exist in the deep sea is a symbol of strength. Coupled with the influence of the spiritual energy of heaven and earth, these powerful marine creatures have the capital to run rampant in the deep sea. But strength is always relative. For the first sea dragon in the ocean to be born with wisdom and advance to the ascension, the marine creatures in the deep sea are simply not enough. As the sea dragon dives from the upper sea to the lower sea, the heavy sea water tears apart on both sides of the sea dragon like cloth split by a sharp arrow. As the sea dragon gradually approaches, a terrible pressure from a higher level of life emanates from the body of the sea dragon. The connection between the spiritual energy of heaven and earth is mutual. Compared with deep sea marine creatures, the spiritual energy of heaven and earth in the sea dragon is a fusion of soul particles and the existence of the ascension. Compared with the authority of the spiritual energy of heaven and earth in the deep sea marine creatures, the sea dragon's control over the spiritual energy of heaven and earth in the surrounding seas is also better than that of deep sea marine creatures. Looking at the deep sea creatures that fled in all directions because of his arrival, the sea dragon only slightly mobilized his own spirit. The surrounding spiritual energy of heaven and earth was like solidified steel, blocking all the sea areas within a few kilometers around the sea dragon. Under the command of the sea dragon's spirit, the active spiritual energy of heaven and earth formed layers of cage barriers, restraining the fleeing marine creatures not far from the sea dragon. Then, the sea dragon's experimental verification process was carried out among these poor marine creatures. Compared with the bloody human experiments, the sea dragon's experimental process was somewhat wonderful. How to describe it? It was like a teacher teaching students knowledge, but the sea dragon taught his own genetic composition. And this kind of teaching of genetic composition does not care whether these deep sea marine creatures can learn it. The sea dragon just copied its own genetic composition in the body of the deep sea marine creature in a cramming manner. The sea dragon's spirit was like a precise scalpel, comparing its own genetic composition and modifying it in the body of other creatures. This kind of genetic modification is not limited to the material level. On the soul level, the sea dragon's spirit is constantly affecting the souls of deep sea marine creatures. As the strongest creature in the ocean, the sea dragon has the most advanced genetic evolution map in the entire ocean. All the life affected by the sea dragon will evolve more or less. No mistake. One post, one content, 1619, one book, one bar. The sea dragon just speeds up its influence on life and the evolution process a little bit through artificial means, so that he can observe the evolution process of these lives and judge the impact of his own way on the little turtle's strength. Avoid the death of his only friend. The disaster caused by this result is extremely terrible for the sea dragon's experimental subjects. As mentioned above, any good policy put into a very short period of time is a terrible disaster. And any cruel policy put into a long period of time is a hymn to life. This conclusion is the same for the evolution of life. The sea dragon forcibly promotes the evolution of marine life through its own will, and the only consequence is the collapse of genes and the dissipation of souls. The experimental subjects will die without a burial place. At the same time, the sea dragon will get the influence of its own power on other lives in a certain period of time, thus creating a very safe process for the little turtle to become stronger. On the Yuanxi star, as one of the several life forms that Li Hao closely followed, when the sea dragon was conducting uninterrupted experiments in the deep sea, Li Hao looked at the sea dragon's approach and named this experiment The History of Yuanshan Radiation Observation. Chapter 23 The Power of Blood. Yuanshan radiation is something that Li Hao named after nuclear radiation because there are certain similarities between the two. It's just that nuclear radiation is a random gene mutation, while Yuanshan radiation is an evolutionary gene mutation. By transmitting its own genetic structure into the bodies of other organisms and modifying the genes of other organisms, a group of affiliated subspecies are created. This existence is like the giant dragon in the Western mythology novels that Li Hao saw in his previous life. There are always certain subspecies around the dragon's nest. The experiment of He Jiao is to accelerate this evolutionary process through his own will, so as to determine the impact of his own genes on other organisms at a certain stage, so as to create a way to make other lives quickly strong in a short time. Normal Yuanshan radiation is to obtain a group of subspecies races attached to itself through a long time. The existence of this race is like a small country controlled by a big country. Without the directional guidance of a big country, this kind of affiliated small country has no room for progress at all. And this is why He Jiao said that once you accept your way of becoming stronger, you will face the loss of hope of becoming stronger. In fact, Yuanshan radiation, from a fantasy point of view, is the blood power in the legend. The ancestors passed on the power they had gained over the long river of time by concentrating it in their blood and souls. They ensured that their descendants would not lose their powerful power due to various small-scale natural environmental changes. Usually, the external way to obtain this bloodline power is to accept direct teachings from higher-level beings, that is, to be given their own blood by higher-level beings. The real inheritance usually exists on the two levels of soul and matter, that is, as the descendants of powerful creatures. As for weak creatures, such as those that have not achieved the Yuanshan, the way they pass on power is to create offspring through reproduction, then pass on their own power. Through mating, their offspring will have part of the talents of both parents, and the cycle will continue. In this way, this race will exist in the world as a powerful race of that era at a certain moment in the future. Instead of accumulating original energy, future generations can directly obtain higher level energy and suppress all weak races. Thus, they can gain the right to rule the world's top leaders. Of course, this way of inheriting power seems powerful, but if there is no inheritance of civilization to match it, to a certain extent, this race can only become a special race that relies on blood power. However, a powerful race can root its own power in the soul. As long as the physical fitness meets certain conditions, it can open the great power left by the ancestors in the blood. As his first friend, Heijao certainly does not want the little turtle to only be able to show off at a low level and just be a decoration in a high level battle. Revenge requires power, and it needs to be powerful enough to make people afraid. The inheritance of blood alone is far from enough. Heijao wants to root his power in the two levels of the little turtle's soul and physical body, but the little turtle is not the offspring of his own reproduction after all. Without the racial body of Heijao, it means that Heijao cannot pass on his power to the little turtle's soul. In order to get rid of this dilemma, Heijao urgently needs to be able to pass on his blood to the little turtle's body through external connection in a short time, and in the safest way. After meeting the conditions for soul inheritance, once again pass on his most fundamental power to the little turtle's soul. In order to fulfill his promise to the little turtle, revenge. The spiritual energy of heaven and earth exists in every corner of the prehistoric star through a special connection. As a product of the combination of the spiritual energy of heaven and earth and soul particles, the Yuanshan has the command authority over most of the spiritual energy of heaven and earth within its own range. Now the sea dragon has blocked a part of the ocean area through its control over the spiritual energy of heaven and earth, and used all the creatures in this part of the ocean area as experimental subjects of its blood power inheritance, and then observed the various trends of its genes interfering with the genes of other creatures. With the Yuanshan of the sea dragon covering the entire blockade area, a large-scale macro-operation was launched in the bodies of hundreds of thousands of marine creatures in this deep sea area. The powerful Yuanshan energy began to quickly permeate this blockade area, and the infectious power similar to radiation, carried by the Yuanshan spread to the genetic level of every marine creature at a very fast speed. The powerful genes from the sea dragon were transmitted to the bodies of marine creatures by the sea dragon through the Yuanshan, and then an implicit rule between the spiritual energy of heaven and earth was activated. This rule was established by Li Hao to ensure that the existence of higher life can be passed on at a very fast speed. The specific way caused by the activation of this implicit rule is the imitation of the spiritual energy of heaven and earth. Through the spiritual energy of heaven and earth in the organism, to imitate the genetic structure of higher life, the organism's body changes, allowing the organism to make a life transition to the existence of higher life, and finally reach the purpose of obtaining the body of higher life. The first rule of the spiritual energy of heaven and earth, while ensuring the integrity of the genetic structure in the host, find the soul particles in the organism and complete the evolution of the life gene. After having a strong genetic structure, the implicit rule will be activated. As long as the genes of powerful organisms are exposed to the spiritual energy of heaven and earth in the lower organisms, the spiritual energy of heaven and earth will spontaneously evolve the host's body genes towards the genes of powerful organisms. However, this kind of evolution usually takes decades or even hundreds of years to complete. The reason why it is so slow is simply because the spiritual energy of heaven and earth in the lower organisms needs to collect the Yuanshan radiation spreading from the higher organisms. No mistakes. One post, one content, one book, one bar, 1619. With the full output of the sea dragon soul, the spiritual energy of heaven and earth in the bodies of marine organisms in the blocked area began a crazy evolutionary journey. A large number of genetic structures were constantly destroyed and then repaired. The spiritual energy of heaven and earth around them, like seawater, continued to gather in the bodies of marine organisms, allowing marine organisms to evolve towards the genetic structure of the sea dragon. This crazy evolutionary process is like the protagonist in the novel who swallowed the blood of a powerful creature directly into his body, after obtaining the blood of a powerful creature. In this way, the blood power of a powerful creature can infect the lower blood in his body, allowing his blood to undergo a leap-like upgrade, thereby obtaining part of the inherited power of a powerful creature. The data that the sea dragon wants to obtain is the process of this low-level creature being infected by the blood of a powerful creature. The sea dragon must know what kind of impact his blood can have on the little turtle before he can decide what kind of way he will use it. In the fastest and safest way, pass on his power to the little turtle's body and help the little turtle complete revenge. Chapter 24 The Power of Inheritance. In the process of the sea dragon's rapid strengthening of the little turtle needs to go through two disasters. One is the disaster of gene recombination, and the other is the disaster of knowledge inheritance. Gene recombination is to transform the body of the little turtle into the genetic structure of the sea dragon's own body, so that the little turtle can accept its own power inheritance. This step is called blood inheritance. After completing this step of inheritance, the little turtle will directly have the physical strength of the sea dragon when the energy core is condensed, and the sea dragon can also evolve according to its own genes, thereby constantly adjusting the genes in the little turtle's body. This step is equivalent to the sea dragon taking on all the dangers to be faced in the evolution process, and directly giving the results of evolution to the little turtle. The second step is the inheritance of knowledge, also called the inheritance of the soul. If the blood inheritance is giving the little turtle a huge fortune, then the soul inheritance is telling the little turtle the direction of the little turtle's future efforts. Generally speaking, when the soul inheritance is completed, the little turtle has already been promoted to the ascension. It can communicate with the sea dragon between the souls. At that time, the sea dragon can convey its perception of the world to the little turtle bit by bit. As the pioneer of the road, the sea dragon is lonely. In the long process of evolution, the sea dragon has been wandering alone in the ocean, without friends, relatives, or even anyone to communicate with. At this time, the sea dragon believes that its existence is meaningless, so it is constantly looking for the meaning of its existence in the process of searching for intelligent life. After meeting the little turtle and agreeing to the little turtle's promise of revenge, the sea dragon believes that it has temporarily found the meaning of its existence. The little turtle is the first friend of the sea dragon and is also a life that gives its existence meaning. The sea dragon has complicated feelings for it and even teaches it everything it has. The combination of blood inheritance and soul inheritance is the historical inheritance of the sea dragon race, but now the sea dragon race only has one sea dragon. The sea dragon's soul covers the entire blockaded sea area, observing the drastic changes that have occurred in deep sea marine life under the guidance of the sea dragon's soul. The genetic structure of the sea dragon is constantly imitated by the spiritual energy of heaven and earth in the bodies of marine organisms. The power of the ascension radiation interferes with the normal genetic structure in the bodies of marine organisms, twisting and crushing the life structure that marine organisms have evolved over a long period of time. After this passive evolution, a large number of marine organisms cannot withstand the power of genetic drastic changes, so their genes collapse and explode and die. Among these dead marine organisms, the sea dragon constantly summarizes the changes of its own genes in other organisms, and thus reversely pushes back the impact of the sea dragon genes on other organisms. If the inheritance of the soul is an infection above the level of consciousness, then the inheritance of blood is an infection at the material level, which is cruel to normal life. The genes of powerful organisms forcibly appear in the bodies of weak organisms, and the impact caused is extremely terrible. The various body organs formed by the genes of powerful organisms cannot support the existence of such powerful organs with the energy contained in the bodies of weak organisms. Even with the continuous repair of the spiritual energy of heaven and earth, it is very difficult for marine organisms to bear the material genes of powerful organisms. If this evolution experiment is extended to a long period of time, then the marine life can still complete the inheritance of blood in the process of continuous destruction and repair. But the time given by the sea dragon is too short. This situation is like an old computer, forcibly running dozens of software in a short period of time. It is abnormal if the system does not crash. After thousands of experiments, the sea dragon finally admitted his failure. It is almost impossible to complete the inheritance of blood in 3 days. The reason why I say almost is that it can still be done, but the price of doing it is too heavy, even the sea dragon can't afford it. Looking at the miserable marine life in front of him, the sea dragon said calmly, "It's still too weak. With my current ability, if I want to pass on the power of blood in a short time, I can only use a lot of heaven and earth spiritual energy to assist me. But with my current ascension strength, it is not enough to attract more heaven and earth spiritual energy to gather here." The sea dragon was sure that he could not really pass on the power of blood in a short time, so he stopped doing useless work. Ignoring the miserable corpses, the sea dragon left the experimental site directly, leaving only a mess. The cold sea water flowed in the gaps of the sea dragon's scales, forcibly calming the sea dragon's boiling mind due to the crazy experiment. Looking at the cold and deep ocean, the sea dragon murmured to himself, if you want to become stronger, you have to fight. And only crazy fighting can make my soul stronger. So as to fulfill my promise to you, you have given me the meaning of existence, and I will definitely fulfill my promise to you. He retracted all his soul power back into his body, relying only on the strength of his flesh to compete with the powerful creatures in the ocean, and through the hesitation between life and death, he strengthened his soul and fulfilled his promise. This is what the sea dragon thought of. At this time, the prehistoric star was actually just like the namely Heyo named it, prehistoric. Everything was a desolate scene. There was no trace of civilization, no history left by civilization, and even the intelligent races needed for the birth of civilization were rare. Under such circumstances, the so-called strengthening skills and cultivation methods did not exist. Any way to make life stronger in a safe place comes from the power of inheritance. The younger generations have acquired huge wealth by accepting the inheritance of their ancestors. These huge wealth have become the cornerstone for the inheritors to become stronger. No mistakes. One sentence, one post, one content, 1619, one book, one bar. As the creators of huge wealth and the ancestors who opened up the road, they have no wealth left by their ancestors. Everything they have can only be obtained from the fight of blood and fire. Whether it is the power of blood or the power of the soul, they are the wealth they have gained in the endless fight. And what Heijio has to do is what every pioneer of the inheritance power has to do, to use his own life to wade out a bloody path in the thorns. Chapter 25. Dragon Fighting in the Wild. In the heavy sea water, the darkness is like an abyss, swallowing up all the light in the world. Even the starlight or bright starlight in the sky can only barely illuminate the middle area of the ocean. Once you go deep into the deepest part of the ocean, all the positive forces that can inspire the upward belief of life will be ruthlessly swallowed up by the deep darkness. In the depths of this darkness, the sea dragon is like a brave man challenging the devil, constantly swimming towards the dark area in the deepest part of the ocean, trying to challenge the dark power of the entire ocean with his own strength. Feeling the little turtle in deep thought under the defense of his scales, the sea dragon said in a cold tone, I will definitely do my promise to you, even if the price is death. The heavy sea water was forcibly separated by the power of the sea dragon's soul. The water pressure contained in the deep sea of Hang Star is extremely strong. Ordinary creatures, let alone approaching here, even if they only see the scene in the deep sea area, there is a great possibility that their reason will be swallowed up by the boundless darkness in the deep sea, and then fall into madness. If the sea dragon wants to become powerful in a short period of time, it must go through endless life and death battles, and use the oppressive feeling generated by the wandering between life and death to force its soul to undergo a sharp change so that it can have the authority to mobilize more spiritual energy of heaven and earth. The soul is an efficient signal receiver. The signal received by the soul is the history generated by the trajectory of life activities in the world. By absorbing these histories, the soul particles of life can be rapidly increased so as to achieve the purpose of strengthening the soul to control more spiritual energy of heaven and earth. When the first civilization of Hang Star had not yet been born, if you want the soul to receive history, there is only one way, to use the sea dragon to open up history and make the sea dragon a part of history. In this way, the sea dragon's soul will be strengthened, and the sea dragon's promise to the little turtle will be fulfilled. As the sea dragon gets closer and closer to the lowest ocean of Hang Star, the inexplicable oppressive force from all around is constantly acting on the sea dragon's soul. This inexplicable oppressive force is the rejection of the sea dragon by the surrounding environment. The feeling of the sea dragon is just like the inexplicable fear that a person feels when he comes to a strange environment. That is the result of the will of life not adapting to the environment. The reaction on the material level is acclimatization, and on the soul level, it is mental confusion. With the strong physical quality of the sea dragon, the pressure of the deep sea is not enough to make the sea dragon feel oppressive. At this time, the inexplicable oppression that the sea dragon feels comes from the crazy creatures at the bottom of the deep sea. Under the long-term dark and oppressive environment, any life with ambition will gradually become crazy. This madness comes from the resistance force generated by the environment's wear and tear of self-will. Originally, the creatures in the deep sea, as the native life in the prehistoric star, had long been accustomed to the dark environment. They are part of the darkness, but with the advent of the spiritual energy of heaven and earth, the prehistoric star creatures are given the ability to open their wisdom. This confrontation between self-consciousness and the environment appeared on the native life in the deep sea. The crazy will of the marine life from the abyss of the deep sea darkness continues to accumulate in the deep sea, thus forming another unique history, a crazy history of marine life. For the ascension, as an amplifier and protective force of soul particles, while ensuring that the host's soul will is not disturbed by the outside world, it is also constantly receiving information from the outside world for the growth of the host's soul particles. Just like the physical body of a human being, while ensuring self-independence, it is also constantly receiving information that makes the self-will mature. Compared with the physical body, the ascension has a strong protective power, but at the same time, the ascension has a very strong signal receiving function. So the crazy will from the abyss of the deep sea is passing through the ascension of the sea dragon, and then affecting the self-will of the sea dragon. There are only two ways to solve it. One is to escape, and the other is to face the difficulties. The sea dragon came to fulfill his promise to the little turtle, so naturally he had only the choice of facing the difficulties. He took a deep breath of the spiritual energy of heaven and earth contained in the sea water, checked the little turtle under the gap of his scales, and after confirming that everything was fine, the sea dragon plunged into the abyss of the deep sea, wanting to gain rapid and powerful power by fighting with the crazy life in the abyss of darkness. Roar. The roar of the beast burst out from the mouth of the sea dragon, and the huge sound waves vibrated the surrounding sea water, exposing the existence of the sea dragon to the many deep sea creatures in the abyss of darkness. As the most powerful life form in the ocean area of Hong Huang Star, the deep sea creatures alone could not cause much damage to the sea dragon, and could not let the sea dragon experience the feeling of wandering between life and death, nor could it make the sea dragon quickly become stronger. So the sea dragon chose to challenge the entire deep sea life on its own, and wanted to force itself to become stronger through endless battles. In this battle, it's either life or death. Rumble, rumble, rumble. Countless roaring sound waves rolled up the heavy sea water, forming deep sea whirlpools in the deep sea, and boundless darkness was gathered in the whirlpools. Just the moment the sea dragon entered the abyss of darkness, dozens of deep sea beasts were torn into countless pieces by the deep sea whirlpool. These flesh and blood fragments were swallowed by the sea dragon, and became the source of power for the sea dragon's next battle. No mistakes. When civilization had not yet been completely born in the prehistoric star, as the first batch of intelligent life on the prehistoric star, everything they had could only be obtained through life and death struggles. Whether it is the spiritual energy of heaven and earth required for evolution, or the flesh and blood genes of other creatures, or even various combat skills, they can only be obtained through endless battles. The spiritual energy of heaven and earth only favors those lives that violate the rules. The flesh and blood genes of other creatures can only be obtained through fighting, and combat skills can only be summarized through fighting. All of this forced the first batch of intelligent life on the prehistoric star to pursue powerful obsessions frantically. Natural rules, survival of the fittest, only the strong can survive, and only the strong can have a future. The claws, which are formed by the trace minerals existing in nature and the blood and flesh genes of the sea dragon, are as strong as steel. Under the command of the sea dragon, they wantonly slaughter the crazy creatures in the abyss of darkness. Endless blood and flesh float in the deep sea, dyeing the entire sea red, dyeing everything blood red. Wherever you look, you can see red. However, this is just the beginning. With the sea dragon's wanton killing, and the sea dragon deliberately showing its existence to the deep sea creatures in the abyss of darkness, more deep sea creatures are like sharks that smell blood, rushing to the position of the sea dragon. Under this powerful beast tide that is enough to drown all forces, just as the sea dragon said, this battle is life or death. End of this chapter. Thank you very much for reaching the end. Don't forget to like. Looking for more exclusive content and immediate access? Subscribe to our Patreon. Remember, every like, subscription, or donation encourages us to continue. Thanks to everyone. See you in the next video.